to tell you that President Trump has confirmed that strikes on Venezuela have been happening over the past few hours. And according to President Trump, that Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been captured in Venezuela. There have been scenes of multiple explosions and low-flying aircraft. All of that heard beginning around 2 a.m. local time in the capital city of Caracas. And the FAA is now banning U.S. commercial flights in Venezuela airspace over what's being called ongoing military activity. This comes after weeks of the U.S. ramping up pressure on the government of President Nicolas Maduro, including seizing 2 oil tankers and conducting deadly military strikes on alleged drug boat smugglers. This week, the Pentagon released video of 2 vessels being hit, saying they were moving along known narco trafficking routes and engaging in narco trafficking.
On Venezuela,
at least 115 people have been killed in more than 30 strikes since September. The U.S. also deploying a large-scale buildup of military forces and assets in the Caribbean, sending the largest, most advanced aircraft carrier in the world, the USS Gerald Ford. It's now part of the 15,000 U.S. troops that are operating in that region. That's in addition to the joint training exercises in Trinidad and Tobago, just 7 miles away from Venezuela. The U.S. is reportedly installing a radar system on that island. In recent weeks, President Trump declaring that Venezuelan airspace should be considered closed in its entirety. Venezuela authorities denouncing that as a colonialist threat that seeks to affect the sovereignty of its airspace. The FAA warned major airlines about a potentially hazardous situation in the skies over Venezuela, citing worsening security and heightened military activity that could threaten aircraft at all altitudes. That prompted 6 international carriers to suspend flights to the capital city of Caracas. And the U.S. recently added Maduro and its government to the State Department's list of the world's most dangerous terrorist organizations. In a pre-taped interview,
they saying they captured this guy and his wife, guys. They have captured Maduro, or whatever his name is, and his wife. Now now Venezuela is asking America for proof that they are still alive, guys. Trump basically ordered airstrikes against them last night, guys, about 4 o'clock this morning.
Accused the U.S. of mounting a months-long pressure campaign to force a regime change and to gain access to vast oil reserves. Maduro has also denied having any ties to the drug trade, accusing the U.S. of using the drug smuggling as a way to oust him from office. Let's go to ABC News correspondent Matt Rivers. He joins us live now on the phone. Matt, what are you hearing? What's the latest?
This stunning message, quite frankly, from President Trump posting on Truth Social, where he says the United States has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its president, Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. He goes on to say the operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. News conference later today at 11 a.m. That is absolutely stunning news and what is a major escalation. You know, in just the last few hours, the torrent of news has been coming out of
y'all make sure y'all take the time to double tap that screen.
Has really just been one surprise after the next. You know, a series of very large explosions, not in some random parts of Venezuela, not on port facilities as many had suspected, but right in the heart of Caracas and the states surrounding Caracas, where we know the heart of Venezuela's military apparatus, its state security apparatus is, and where Nicolas Maduro himself has governed from for well over a decade now as the leader of Venezuela. So those explosions, people running in the streets, videos of helicopters in the air, certainly stunning images overnight in and of themselves, which led the Venezuelan government, or what is left of it apparently at this point, to put out a statement saying that it was the U.S. military responsible for this. The president of Colombia nearby had also accused the United States of doing this, but initially we didn't hear from the U.S. government specifically about what was going on until this post from President Trump on Truth Social, not only announcing that the U.S. military was responsible for these military strikes, which was surprising in and of itself, but certainly not something that was unexpected given the massive force
Thank you, Miss Parker.
buildup that we have seen from the U.S. military over the past several
Thank you,
months in this
Carly.
region. Strikes were always a possibility given that force buildup that we've seen. But what is really going to stun the world, I think, is what happened, according to President Trump, that they were able to capture Nicolas Maduro and his wife and fly them out of the country. Remember, the United States has long accused Maduro of being a drug trafficker, of being the head of a group called the Cartel de los Soles, which is a loosely organized group in Venezuela that the United States says is responsible for pushing lots of cocaine into the Caribbean and up to the United States. There was a $50 million reward on his head at this point for information leading to his capture and arrest. And so it does appear the president is leaning into that, talking about the operation being done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, perhaps seeking to fend off questions down the road.
This is
that might
crazy,
come up
guys.
about the legality of strikes like this. So he's leaning into the law enforcement element of this. But there is no question this is a stunning overnight series of events in the country of Venezuela, not just these strikes themselves, but also the apparent capture and flying out of the country, the head of government of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife.
With this apparently at this point, because we are still getting information in, that this was the reason for this operation, getting Maduro and his wife, capturing them and then flying them out of the country. Are there still operations going on, these military strikes, or do you know yet if they've subsided?
Well, from what it seems like, and again, in the initial hours after events like this, especially in the overnight hours, especially
Look like we headed into a battle, Miss Parker.
Out what kind of information
If
is
they
getting
don't
out there? There is
get
definitely the
Trump out of
fog of war
there,
that is
we're
in play here. So
doomed,
we're very
man.
careful to
Hey,
only
man,
report
listen,
exactly
it's
what we
crazy,
know. But if
y'all.
you look at what President Trump is
We
saying
ain't been to
here,
war in a
the
long
United States
time,
has
but we look
successfully
like we about to go
carried
now.
out in the past tense a large-scale
They done
strike
captured
against Venezuela and its leaders.
the
So if
president
you
of
just use the
Venezuela and
president's
his
words
wife
there, perhaps
and
it's
flew
over,
them
but
out
we're
of
not sure
Venezuela.
yet. We have to be very clear with our audience
Says
about what we know
Trump.
and what we don't know, and we're simply not sure. But we also know that it might not have just been Maduro himself targeted. You know, if you were going to take out the majority of the Maduro government, if you were going to reduce the capacity of the Maduro government to actually govern, then you would, of course, need to target not just Maduro himself, but also other members of his government. And so that's what we're going to be waiting to see. What else happened here? We know that there was explosions across the area in places where we know
we've been striking their boats and all of that. Now we done captured their president and his wife.
Military bases where we know that the state security apparatus operates from. And so what did those strikes entail? What were the intent of those strikes, and what were the outcome of those strikes? We know, obviously, according to the president, that President Maduro has been captured and taken out of the country, but I'm also curious to know what the outcome of the other strikes were, and quite frankly, who is in charge of the government of Venezuela at the moment? That is an outstanding question that we do not, at least right now, have an answer to. And remember, this is a country, millions and millions of people. The Caracas metropolitan area in and of itself, well over 3 million, 4 million, 5 million people who at the moment are learning right now at the same time as the rest of us.
Some people believe this is over all. What y'all think? Remember, we captured their tanker as well.
Who do you think is sort of at the realm
Trump
of
said we
taking
keeping
over
the
at this
oil.
point? I mean,
Next thing you know, we striking
we're striking the country
and taking their
does that mean
president.
another person from Maduro's government is stepping in, or are we seeing some other candidates step forward?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't think we have the answer to that yet. I think it's too early to tell. I mean, someone put out a statement.
Ms. Parker said they definitely want the oil.
And it clearly wasn't President Maduro. But we did
right now, we're taking a look at what's going on in Venezuela with the U.S. basically striking the country and taking their president and his wife basically into custody, guys, and flying them out of the country. Make sure you're double tapping that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or you can click those 3 dots, hit that thumbs up. You know, it most definitely helps out the channel. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Trump is due to give a speech at 11 o'clock. We'll most definitely be there as well. Make sure you're double tapping that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button.
a message that was sent out to the media by remaining members, apparently, of the Maduro government. One man does
most
not make a
definitely
government,
sleeping
obviously,
on Russia.
just
Let's go,
because
Miss
President
Sparkle.
Maduro is out doesn't mean that other members of his government are not still there. But what is their governing capacity? What authority does
They say the question
civilian
is, who's
population
running the country
bestow on these
now that
people?
this
And
guy's
quite
in
frankly,
U.S.
what does the
custody?
United States allow to happen here? I think there's no question that the United States will have a hand in who is the next person to lead Venezuela. If you look at the results of the last election in that country, which was widely considered to be a fraudulent election that Maduro lost by a 3-1 margin, there was an opposition candidate. Is that something that could happen? Could you see a democratic transition to an opposition? Sure, in theory, but you also have members of a vast security state in Venezuela, from the military on down to state-level security, on down to community-level security, that were collecting government paychecks from the Maduro government. So do they recognize a new democratic transition? These are all the kinds of questions that we simply do not have the answers to yet, given that this is just the right questions to be asking, but there's certainly no way we're going to have these answers as we continue to just sift through this information about what happened here in what has just been a stunning, just a few hours of news as this has come in, has completely upended the entire geopolitical landscape in one of the most important countries in South America.
All right, Matt Rivers, thanks so much for that great reporting and all of that analysis. Let's go to senior White House correspondent Selena Wang, who is joining us from West Palm Beach. Are you learning anything more from the White House?
Well, look, we were waiting for an official statement from a U.S. official, from the Pentagon, from the White House. But what is so stunning here is that we got the official confirmation from the president, and what he said in his
Let's
post
go, Ms.
online
Parker.
is really stunning.
This is
I'm
what
just going
Trump
to read
had
it
to
you.
say, guys.
It is, quote, "The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow." The president goes on to say that there will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago here in West Palm Beach. We are still waiting for more information. We don't know where President Nicolas Maduro, along with his wife, have been taken to. There will certainly be questions asked at that 11 a.m. press conference. But look, this comes as we have seen this steady ramp up of U.S. pressure on Venezuela from an economic perspective, diplomatically, militarily, the U.S. amassing the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including deploying the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford. It was known that the whole purpose of this big show of military force was directed at President Nicolas Maduro. But lawmakers from both sides unclear what the end game from the president was, but certainly this announcement from the president is striking and stunning and
Say
surprising
Elon
to
has
many.
autism,
But the
Lord
president
have
has for
mercy.
weeks, though, been warning that land strikes were coming very soon. The president telling me not long ago that they know every house, every route, and where the drugs are manufactured, but the expectation there was that these strikes were going to be singularly focused on where these drugs are manufactured, not on leadership. Now, the president said just days ago, he revealed that the U.S. struck a dock in Venezuela that he...
Now they saying that it's all about basically drugs, but a lot of people theorize this is all going on overall.
...the cartels were using to transport drugs overseas. That was the beginning of this new phase of this U.S. operation, because that marks the first time we know it that the U.S. carried out a strike inside Venezuela.
Thank you.
Prior to this, Allison, we had seen a lot of the U.S.
Time.
pressure on Venezuela coming into seas. The U.S. has launched at least 30 deadly strikes against alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Coast Guard has also pursued and seized oil tankers linked to Venezuela. That is really an effort to squeeze Venezuela economically, as oil is really the lifeblood.
Let's make sure we taking time to double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, guys, or click the 3 dots, hit the thumbs up. Make sure you like the channel. It helps. Make sure you like the video. It helps out the channel, guys. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Of the Maduro regime.
Okay, Selena Wang, stand by. I'm going to go back to ABC's Matt Rivers with news about a statement from Venezuela's defense minister. Matt.
Yeah, so we're just, again, this is all just coming in.
What's
So
up,
bear with
Jim?
us as we sift through the details here, Allison. But Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez, who is speaking from an unknown place, has apparently come out talking about this criminal, what he calls a criminal military aggression from the United States. He confirmed
Thank you, Ms. Reed.
once again that there were multiple areas within Caracas and the states surrounding Caracas that were targeted, including, crucially, Fort Tiuna. Fort Tiuna is the main military complex there, right in Caracas, and striking that has certainly would certainly be considered a major escalation. And now, given what the president said, we know that that has taken place. Well, according to the defense minister, helicopters were used in combat. There was helicopter gunships used on the part of the United States. And so he is speaking and has said that the government continues. He called the United States act criminal. He's asking for people in Venezuela to remain calm and to not panic. They want to avoid chaos and anarchy. He has announced a state of emergency across the entire national territory, and he has called up a deployment of all relevant military members there inside the country. So this is the first time we're really hearing a senior member of the Maduro government come out and talk like this, a very senior person, given that is the defense minister. But crucially, it's not Maduro himself. Given what the president has said, that's not a surprise. But this is the first time that we're hearing specifically from a senior member here.
Did the defense minister mention, have any information about how many injured?
This is wild, guys.
He did say, it's a good question. He said that because these attacks happened in an urban complex, which we know is true because we know that some of the main military bases in Caracas are in populated areas, even where there are hotels nearby. He says that they are currently checking in numbers of
looks like we're about to have a battle on our hands, guys.
Specifically as to what those numbers are.
Okay, ABC's Matt Rivers, thanks so much for that information. I want to go to Stephen Ganyard. He's an ABC News contributor. I want to get your reaction now that we've heard since the last time we spoke, now that we have confirmation about this move from the White House to get Maduro and his wife, capture them and out of the country. What is your reaction?
It's extraordinary. When we talked a few minutes ago, that we saw that there were videos from Caracas showing multiple helicopters, which presumably were U.S. Special Operations helicopters, MH-47 Chinooks. There appeared to be a attack by helicopters on some part of Caracas, showing rockets going into an area that appeared to be coming from helicopters. So this would seem to be a big operation that went after the main elements of the Maduro regime and the Venezuelan military. So we know that the strikes were against numerous military targets, to include communication sites up in the hills above Caracas. But most interestingly, all of that probably was a diversion, or at least something to distract the Venezuelan military while the special operations folks were in snatching Maduro and his wife.
All right, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for that. I want to go to Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz. Martha, what is your reaction?
I think this was something that people were standing by for, but certainly not to this scale. We had 15,000 U.S. forces in the region. We have seen these strikes again.
We are active in Venezuela, guys.
Boats. Been asked about regime change. Certainly, Donald Trump had made threats about that, had pressured Maduro, but I don't think anyone was expecting something this large scale, and to capture the president and his wife in this sort of operation. President Trump has given hints about the CIA operations earlier this week, but nothing to this scale, and this is something we just have to watch. We certainly have the assets in the region to basically do anything we want at this point, and standing by for any reaction.
What's up, Clayco?
Maduro isn't recognized as a legitimate leader for many countries.
Let's take time to double tap that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button.
This is being received, this capture and takeout of Maduro and his wife, taking them out of the country. How is this being received on the world stage?
Well, on the world stage, certainly. I mean, it's shocking in many ways, whether he's seen as the legitimate leader or not. It's shocking. I'm certain some countries will be happy about this. Obviously, President Trump is happy about this after all these warnings. But on the world stage, to have the United States of America go in and grab, as President Trump has said, capture the Venezuelan president and his wife is startling around the world.
Talk to me more about the significance of that.
I think the significance of that is obvious. You have the United States involving itself in military operation that we chose to do, that President Trump chose to do without provocation beyond these drug boats, and certainly Congress will have something to say about this as well.
What are your thoughts about economically how this could impact oil prices and oil supply around the world?
Around the world, I mean, this is a major.
Let's take time to double tap that screen. Get the likes over 100, guys. We need 30 more likes. Double tap that screen if you're on a mobile device, or click the three dots, hit the thumbs up.
Who else gets involved? I mean, that is a key thing to watch here. What the reaction is from our adversaries, certainly from Russia, from Iran, from others who go in and out of there with oil. We've already got that tanker that the United States was pursuing, and that is something that the world will have to brace itself for as well.
All right. ABC's Martha Raddatz, thanks so much. Again, President Trump confirming this moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and they've been flown out of the country. We're going to go ahead and return you to your regular programming. Actually, before we do that, let's get back to Selena Wang from West Palm Beach with more information.
The president of Venezuela and his wife have both been captured, guys.
The president is giving a brief interview to the New York Times where he celebrated the success of the mission to capture Maduro.
Thank you, Il.
A lot of good planning and a lot of great troops and people. He went on to say it was a brilliant operation, actually. And when the president was asked if he sought congressional authority or what is next for Venezuela, the president said he would address those matters during his news conference at Mar-a-Lago this morning. The president earlier posting that news conference is going to be at 11 a.m. So, Allison, still key outstanding questions about all of this. For one,
Thank you,
where are they taking Maduro and his wife? What will the legal charges be? Was Congress notified? Was the CIA involved in this? Who led this operation? And
I don't know what's to happen next, guys. I just know that they have captured the Venezuelan president and his wife. And now Venezuela is asking America to prove that they are alive, guys.
Militarily, the U.S. had positioned the largest military presence in the Caribbean in decades, including the world's largest aircraft carrier. This massive show of force that was really directed at President Nicolas Maduro. But so much of that pressure was really primarily focused at sea, the U.S. striking these alleged drug boats. So the president had been threatening these land strikes. Certainly a surprise to many that it has gone to this extent. The U.S. also had been pursuing seizing oil tankers linked to Venezuela. And I just want to point out one quote from the White House Chief of Staff that was given in a series of interviews to Vanity Fair that was recently published. She had suggested that this entire campaign may actually be about regime change, saying Trump, quote, wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle.
With the president declaring this a successful mission, do you know, and I know you're not on the ground in Venezuela, but are there still strikes happening over Venezuela?
That is a question. I mean, if we look and dissect the president's post, he is speaking of the past tense, saying has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader. Typically, you would not want to be posting that it's been successful if you're still in the middle of the operation. So it appears that for now, the military action has been completed. But as I just mentioned earlier, still key questions. Do U.S. forces remain on the ground? Where do things go from here? We're really in uncharted territory, and it's also unclear who led this this operation. Just a few days ago, President Trump revealed himself what we know of to be the first land strike
Continue to
inside
smash
Venezuela.
that like button, guys.
They struck a dock in Venezuela.
Continue to smash that like button by double tapping the screen if you're on a mobile device, or clicking those three dots, hitting that thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'm giving y'all everything that I know about the U.S. strikes on Venezuela and the capturing of the president and his wife.
That he claimed was used by the cartels to transport drugs overseas. It was reported by CNN that it was the CIA that carried out that strike using a drone. And Steve Ganyard has talked about why the CIA was used in that instance. It means the president doesn't need congressional authorization. Now what we're talking about here is an entirely different scale, a significant, a striking, stunning escalation.
Right, Selena Wang, thanks so much for all of that great reporting. Let's go back to ABC News contributor Stephen Ganyard. Stephen, I'm curious what the ramifications you see at this moment are, knowing that, you know, the U.S. dipped in, took Nicolas Maduro and his wife, captured them, and flew them out of the country. What are the ramifications of this?
I think this may be the end of military action, at least for now. Again, so hard to tell because, you know, the sun hasn't come up. We don't have any reports other than Maduro's out of the country. But I do think that because they have Maduro, that the U.S. has done what they've needed to do. They've neutered the Venezuelan military, and they have Maduro. And so really there's not much reason for any follow-on U.S. military action. And so the fact that the U.S. has snatched Maduro, will probably put him on trial, means that this may come to an end before it escalates. So that's an optimistic look at where we are this morning. But given that Maduro's out, the regime will essentially fall. The U.S. has hit ports, they've hit barracks, they've hit airfields, they've hit communication sites. So all of this means that the Maduro regime has essentially been brought down, and so this could be it in terms of what we're going to see out of military action by the U.S. for quite a while.
How involved do you see the U.S. in a new regime in Venezuela?
Well, hopefully the U.S. has learned some lessons about putting new regimes into place, and that will be up to the Venezuelan people. We know that there have been several candidates who have been Democrats who've been likely legitimately elected, but the Maduro regime obviously stuffed the ballot boxes to make look like Maduro was the elected representative. So I think what's most interesting here is what happens next, and whether those Democratic, at least those leaders who see a brighter democratic future for the people of Venezuela, whether they are able to have their voices heard, and whether they are able to overthrow the yoke of the Maduro regime.
And the overthrow of the regime, many will say that this was, you know, obviously unexpected, but certainly, you know, way over the top than what many would predict. Do you think this was the best way of upending the Maduro regime?
Well, it's certainly the cleanest, and it means that there'll be less military action, hopefully, going forward, and that Maduro will be brought to trial for his numerous crimes.
How do you think civilians in Venezuela are seeing this move this morning?
They're probably shocked. I mean, everybody, as Matt Rivers was reporting, he's talking to people in Caracas.
They more than shocked, guys. They are in the streets protesting.
A feeling that something was going to happen given the degree and the size of the U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, but they didn't know it would be this bold, this daring. I mean, this is going to be very interesting to figure out how the U.S. Special Operations Forces went in there. How did they snatch the Maduro and his wife? How did they get the intelligence? All of the rehearsals that would have had to have gone into effect. Where did those helicopters launch from? Really just a stunning, amazingly successful, as of right now, operation by U.S. Special Operations Forces.
Very quickly, Stephen, what do you see the U.S. Congress saying, doing about this?
Well, they're not going to be happy. I'm not seeing any reports that Congress had been notified beforehand, and part of that may be that the president wanted to maintain operational security. I mean, if you're going to put special operations forces on the ground in Venezuela and in Caracas, then operational security is absolutely essential here. And so maybe the notifications weren't done. The Congress is not going to be happy about that. But if this is the last of the military strikes, then maybe that it's all going to be a moot point.
Okay, Stephen Ganyard, thanks so much for all that great analysis. Again, President Trump confirming just moments ago that the U.S. launched large-scale strikes against Venezuela and that President Maduro and his wife have been captured and flown out of Venezuela. President Trump will be holding a news conference later today, happening at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to go ahead.
This is crazy, guys. So it's looking like we're about to be in battle, guys.
The President of the United States,
like
Donald Trump, has just posted a statement on Truth Social. This is the first public acknowledgement by the United States. I will read it for you, just seeing this pop up on my phone as we speak while texting back and forth with senior advisors at the White House. From the President of the United States. The United States of America has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow, according to the President. There will be a news conference, he says, today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. He then punctuates it, as he often does, with thanks for your attention to this matter. It is signed by the President. So again, I want to repeat two of the key sentences in there. He confirms that the U.S. carried out this large-scale strike against Venezuela, and he says that its leader, President Nicolas Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. So, according to the President of the United States, Nicolas
How will
Maduro
this
is no
play
longer
out,
on
guys?
the
What do
ground
y'all
in
think?
Venezuela, it leaves open.
Let's take time to double tap that screen if you have not, guys. If you're on a mobile device, double tap that screen. That's how you hit the like button, or click those three dots in the right-hand corner, hit the thumbs up, man. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. America has basically did airstrikes on Venezuela, captured their president and his wife. The people of Venezuela are asking America to show that the president and his wife are still alive, guys. That's where we at right now.
In terms of leadership, it's not entirely clear who is effectively running that country at this time. I just want to get your immediate reaction to the news that we are hearing again in a Truth Social post from the President of the United States.
Well, this changes everything. This means that this was a regime change operation and that this was had some degree of coordination. Witnesses earlier described helicopters. Witnesses described low-flying aircraft. I was taken aback by what you just said, that Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been taken into custody. That means there were either local forces on the ground or local forces working with Americans to hand over the
Some
leader
people say SEAL Team 6 may have been the one to capture them.
We just saw a regime change operation.
Y'all see the airplanes in the sky,
quickly
the choppers.
in the early hours. You said, does it leave a power vacuum? I know that for the last several months, there have been conversations going on through intermediaries with the generals and the top leaders around Maduro, trying to convince them to turn on him, to hand him over, to allow him to be arrested, and to get him to use the phrase what we had heard earlier, to cry uncle. He wasn't crying uncle, and now it seems he was arrested. An extraordinary development.
Now,
it
Richard,
started out with some boat strikes, and then to a military campaign on land, and now a military operation and an arrest.
And Richard, that of course, it opens up a lot. I apologize for interrupting again. That breaking news that according to the President of the United States, the U.S. has now successfully launched, carried out, as he says, what was a large-scale strike attacks in and around Caracas, the capital city of Venezuela. Beyond that, he says that the U.S. has captured and flown out of the country Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And Richard, I bring this up because it's significant for a variety of reasons. Nicolas Maduro, only a matter of days ago, said in a new interview that he was open to negotiating with Washington to combat drug trafficking, the first sign that this pressure campaign was taking its toll. The questions that it raises now are, was there any resistance by Maduro when this took place?
Man, that looks like a video game.
negotiated with those around him? Those are questions we have on the ground. As you say, the U.S. swept in and did this under the veil of darkness. It took place very quickly. We don't know what may have occurred on the ground right now, but it raises a lot of real questions about what, if any, conversations did exist in any form with Nicolas Maduro, or if this was the first contact when, in effect, the United States military was knocking on his door and sweeping up him and his wife and taking them out of the country.
Panama too. Noriega, people, those who remember the story, he was accused of being a narco trafficker, refused to leave. U.S. forces swept in and grabbed him. To answer some of the questions, I know for the last several months
So now at this point, we don't know how many people are hurt. You know how many people are unalive. We have no idea yet. Just that it happened.
Been contacts through intermediaries with Maduro's inner circle to try to convince him to leave the country. He was not interested. He was resisting. This pressure campaign has been escalating. First with the boats, then with President Trump declaring him a narco-terrorist, then all of the U.S. military buildup in the region, the aircraft carrier strike groups, the submarines, the drones, aircraft. Then, shortly before New Year's, a land strike allegedly carried out by the CIA. Very few details about what was hit then. And now, overnight, a capture operation. You don't do a capture operation without attacking some military sites, because you need to clear the airspace, you need to clear away air defenses, you need to protect the helicopters and the troops that are going in to remove the person you're trying to arrest. So the U.S., President Trump, just decided to pull a Panama II for New Year's and effect regime change in Venezuela. An extraordinary development. And then you asked, was this coordinated? It could only have been coordinated with at least some people who turned on Maduro, because the people knew where he was. They knew where his family was. It sounds like he is still alive, and I would not be surprised if we see him in front of an American court in the coming weeks.
Man, that's crazy.
So this has been a
look like a volcano
of
eruption
developments taking place overnight in the early hours.
We did a lot of damage over there,
January
guys.
3rd, shortly after 2 o'clock local time. The first reports from eyewitnesses on the ground of explosions taking place in and around the capital city of Caracas, Venezuela. And now, within a matter of minutes ago, we are hearing from the president again, detailing publicly, among other things, that the U.S. was behind what he described as a large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, Nicolas Maduro. He says Maduro has been captured and flown out of the country alongside his wife. The president does not detail where they are being taken at this time. The president, who remains at his Mar-a-Lago estate, his property in Palm Beach, Florida, says that this operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement, and says that there will be a
All right, hold on.
orders and the American people at a news conference to take place at about 11 o'clock, excuse me, Eastern time. I want to get back to Gabe Gutierrez, if I can, right now. He is our senior White House correspondent. Gabe, you're joining us by phone as well. You've been traveling with the president there, speaking to some of his aides and allies over the course of the last week, while most people were enjoying their holiday break. But the White House has been very focused on a variety of things. One, what's been taking place in Venezuela with a new series of boat strikes in recent days. That strike on a docking facility that the president himself revealed, though the U.S. has not said if the CIA was behind it. Separately, they've been focused on the situation between Russia and Ukraine as well. But the president, Gabe, as you and I have discussed together, has said publicly throughout that the desire is to end the transportation of illegal drugs into the United States, and the White House has sort of pushed back on the idea that this focus has been regime change. So the president himself said in an interview not long ago that Maduro's days were in effect numbered. This is a significant, notable change, and it does impact the U.S. in terms of its policy as it relates to Venezuela and to that region.
Oh, Peter, this is just staggering news. That announcement by the president that not only did the U.S. carry out these strikes, but actually has captured Nicolas Maduro And you're right, Peter. We have had conflicting messages from this administration over the past several months on what was the goal of these boat strikes and of this military buildup in the Caribbean. Certainly, a lot of skeptics of the administration wondered why send so many troops to the Caribbean just for, airstrikes on these alleged drug boats in and around the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific. And now it appears that this coordinated attack, an operation to remove Nicolas Maduro from power is just staggering news. And we had been hearing for quite some time, Peter, for the last several months. I remember speaking with some officials within the administration who did say that there had been some talks with members of Nicolas Maduro's inner circle, and that the administration was trying to get at least some of them to turn on Nicolas Maduro. Of course, we have many questions now about how exactly all this went down. What were the details? Did someone turn him in? How did this operation go down in the middle of the night, just after a holiday week? Certainly, we will hope to learn more of those details when the president speaks later on today in South Florida. But something I will bring up, Peter, and something we have not discussed, what happens now with leadership in Venezuela?
Right.
It was not very long ago that...
Shout out to Ken for being a member for the last 14 months. Shout out to you, my guy.
Actually was recognized and accepted the Nobel Peace Prize for fighting for democracy. And she made this incredible, daring journey from being in hiding in Venezuela to collect her prize in Norway, despite government restrictions. So you remember during the first Trump administration, the president backed the opposition candidate then, Juan Guaido, while there were government protests back then, ongoing blackouts, hyperinflation, and unrest inside Venezuela. But those protests fizzled, and Maduro stayed in power. Clearly, that is not the case this time, and many questions about the future of leadership in that country now.
Gabe, stay with us. Richard Engel, stay with us. To our viewers who are waking up and watching this this historic moment with us right now, the United States, in the words of the president, has successfully carried out a large-scale strike against Venezuela. The president adds that both its leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife have been captured and taken out of the country. Joining us now from the ground in Caracas, that is the capital city of Venezuela, is journalist Vanessa Herrero. Vanessa, I know you have heard the president's statement. You have seen what he has said. A matter of minutes ago when we spoke to you, you were reacting to strikes on the ground. Now you're reacting for the first time live to word that there is no longer a President Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela right now. I want to get your reaction and what, if anything, you're hearing from those who are awake at this early hour there.
Well, I think, as you all said, this is a historic moment. If this, Trump just confirmed this, but of course, when the footage, the pictures, the story about how he was caught, if he resisted or not, what happened, when exactly, come to light, I'm sure we're gonna see a great deal of reaction, not only around Caracas, but in the entire country. This is exactly a moment in history. We're talking about 20 years of Chavismo just vanishing in over a night, over hours, not even a night, hours. This situation really, I believe now more than ever, now that Donald Trump just tweeted that, said that on his Truth Social, that I believe that this strike was absolutely caught out of the blue, caught unaware the Venezuelan government. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling there, but it's really huge news right now.
No, Ana Vanessa, I appreciate your being with us right now. The first voice from inside Venezuela, sharing the experiences you've had, what you have seen there. If you can just take a breath for a moment. You know the situation about as well as anybody. You've covered that that region, spent so much time clearly in Venezuela. Just
Yes.
your gut, when you heard that news, what was your reaction?
I was absolutely shocked, to be honest. I didn't believe this could be possible. I still don't know. I still don't know what is happening right now. We don't have confirmation again about, at least from Venezuela. We don't have anyone saying that this happened or how it happened. But there are a lot of videos flowing around WhatsApp and social media showing helicopters near what they claim, the people recording claim to be the house of high government officials, Delcy Rodriguez, Jorge Rodriguez, Diosdado Cabello. We haven't heard from them. So we do know now about Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores, but we don't know about, for example, Maduro's number two, Diosdado Cabello, who's also a huge name for the U.S. government. We have no confirmation of his whereabouts. We don't know if his was affected by the strike, if he was in Caracas at the moment.
So the people in Venezuela kind of feeling like Trump then came through and kidnapped their president and his wife.
We just don't know.
Well, Ana Vanessa, you know what's striking to me is we obviously need to get a better understanding from the White House and from others about the timeline that took place here. But we did quickly get a statement from the Venezuelan government after these strikes began, saying in effect that this was an extremely serious military act of aggression.
Yeah.
So it raises questions about if Nicolas Maduro was no longer in a position to be leading, who is leading, who in the system is still governing, in effect, to be putting out these defiant statements directed at the United States, and what, if any, plan exists to help try to stabilize that country, as it were, in the immediate days and weeks that may follow here, without its leader, though a leader that the U.S. described as the head of a narco-terrorist state, without its presence there on the ground.
Well, it is unknown because we just know, as I was telling you, we only know about Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores. We don't know, for example, about Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president, or Jorge Rodriguez, the head of the Chavista-controlled Congress and the parliament. So we don't know, for example, if Delcy Rodriguez is still here, she should, she's still in Venezuela, if she's not affected, she wasn't affected by the
I don't know where the backup was at, guys.
In order to understand what's going to happen next. But if the high members, 6 or 7 high members of the Venezuelan government, Nicolas Maduro's government, were also maybe taken or affected, then we don't know what would the protocol be. We do know that Nobel laureate Maria Corina Machado, who is a key ally to Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the winner of 2024 elections, according to the vote tallies. We do know that she said that they have the transition already to start whenever Nicolas Maduro was out of power. So maybe we can expect the opposition to take the place and start this this so-called transition into maybe new elections.
Ana Vanessa Herrero, we are so grateful that we've been able to speak to you live for our rolling coverage of this historic developing news.
This is wild, guys.
In Caracas, Venezuela again, and we repeat it because it's so dramatic and I think, frankly, for a lot of people, quite stunning, as Ana Vanessa herself just said. The President of the United States making very clear that the U.S. has successfully carried out a large-scale strike in Caracas, Venezuela, that country's capital city, and the president says that its president, Nicolas Maduro, has been captured. He, alongside his wife, have been taken out of the country by the United States. I want, if I can, very quick.
So a lot of people are asking, how do the people feel?
Back to
how do the people feel? Let's see this. Let's see how the people feel.
es el pueblo latinoamericano, es el pueblo del mundo. Hoy está marchando el propio pueblo de los Estados Unidos, porque nuestra América, la Via Yala, es toda, desde la Patagonia hasta Alaska, y van a ser derrotados.
This is in Venezuela, guys. I don't know what they saying. I don't know what they saying, but they don't sound happy, guys. I'm just saying.
Pero sobre todo, millones de hombres y mujeres del mundo que han tomado conciencia. Yo les digo, hermanos, hermanas, hoy más que nunca, todos y todas somos Chávez.
They don't sound happy to me.
Todos y todas somos Huáscar Puro.
This is in Venezuela.
Todos y todos somos Nicolás Maduro. ¡Que viva Chávez! ¡Que viva Maduro! ¡Que viva Bolívar! ¡Que viva la patria, carajo! ¡Váyanse al carajo, gringos de mierda!
We need a translator. I don't know what they saying, but they don't sound too happy to me, guys. They don't sound ecstatic to me about the president being gone.
Que requiere el pueblo venezolano en estos momentos. Nosotros venimos de Petare, ahí en el muro de Petare, y hay una manifestación también del pueblo mirandino que se hace presente en defensa de la patria. Nosotros debemos ahora más que nunca mostrar nuestra unidad. No hay espacio para dubitaciones, no hay espacio para dudar. Aquí dudar es traición. Por eso nosotros desde Miranda estamos activados en cada uno de los 21 municipios, las 55 parroquias, los 468 circuitos comunales, igual las 4.314 comunidades. Nosotros exigimos al gobierno de los Estados Unidos que nos devuelvan a nuestro presidente Nicolás.
Even if they over there going out, Trump gonna say the people were cheering in the street, they were happy, they were delighted, all of that.
Y a nuestra primera dama Silvia Flores. Nosotros debemos hacer causa común. En este momento no debemos nosotros tener duda y no debemos salir de las calles.
Like right now, they could be extra mad. Trump gonna be saying, yeah, they were very happy that we came through and kidnapped the president. The people they all took to the street, they were cheering and happy all about it, even though they mad. We don't know what they saying. I sure don't know what they saying. I'm just saying.
Nuestras calles, las calles son del pueblo y el pueblo debe defender a su presidente, a su primera combatiente en las calles. Así fue, compañeros, camaradas de esta patria venezolana. En ustedes está la unidad y está la defensa de la patria. Hemos sido atacados criminalmente por el gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Hemos sido atacados en diversos sectores. Nosotros en Miranda fuimos atacados en el aeropuerto Higuerote, en el aeropuerto Caracas de los Valles del Tuy, en el fuerte Huaycaipuro, en el Latillo y en la Carlota. Y tenemos paja.
I heard Vida Loca. Don't that mean crazy or something like that? Yeah, that was just a little bit from the people over there. I just wanted to show y'all the people over there. Let's get to what's going on over here.
Take the actions. The leadership of Venezuela is a foreign terrorist organization that is impacting the national security interests of the United States. It's understood that we'll take action. This is a different angle. There will always be a group of international lawyers and activists that say that's inappropriate. And then there'll be the vast majority of nation states that say, we understand what we're doing. You're not going to hear a lot of public positive comments from us. Some countries will go out and say it. The vast majority will just quietly support us. But the bottom line is this is not, in the long term, over a 5 to 10 year period, if the opposition gets in power fairly painlessly over the next few months, this will be seen as a positive action by the United States and will redound to President Trump's, reputation.
Mark, I want to touch on the strike itself, and I want to put back up this video that we've gotten in from overnight that we shared.
Lord, that one even worse than the other one.
The strike reportedly lasted less than 30 minutes. Does that suggest to you that this was maybe meant to be a limited
like
operation
fireworks.
rather than a potential start to a war?
100%. This is a limited operation. As I said, I think it probably had two main objectives to it. One, create a distraction so the special operators could execute their mission. And two, send a strong deterrent signal to the military and intelligence services that you cannot stop us. This is not the fight you want to be in. You know, make a decision rapidly to either go home or leave the country.
Now, as we look ahead to this press conference here from President Trump, he's not going to be speaking from the White House. He's actually going to be in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. What details are we going to hear from President Trump? Is he able to share with the American people a great deal of information, answers to a lot of these questions as to where
the third day of the year, he already done started trouble with Venezuela again.
Information under wraps for now.
Make sure y'all double tapping that screen, guys. That's how you hit the like button or click the three dots, hit that thumbs up. It helps out the channel. Make sure you subscribe and if you're new.
Flattering of the military and of the, probably the Drug Enforcement Agency and the others that have allowed this to happen, and the intelligence community, which is great. That's what the president should do. I'm not sure there are ever limits on what President Trump can or can't say. If you tell him facts, you may or may not hear them in the press conference, no matter how much you encourage him not to say them. So he might say some things that are interesting. He might say where Maduro was taken to initially on the helicopters. He might say, were there any medical challenges, like where was Maduro shot, during this operation? It sounds like, I think that would have leaked by now if it were true. And he would say where they physically are at 11 o'clock in the morning. Are they already in New York? Or are they someplace else being held? Those are the kind of things that we'll probably find out. And we might find out some indications of him of if he's tried to have any communications with either the opposition or with the, the vice president, the remains of the Maduro regime, the cronies that are still in power. And he may signal to them, like, you have 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, to get your affairs in order and get out of that country. I think that would be the strongest signal, is if he very directly spoke to the remains of the Maduro regime. And
it is about 25 pages long, so I've been reading through it, trying to get the latest information. We do expect that we will get much, much more coming up here in just a bit as we hear from President Trump over at Mar-a-Lago and War Secretary Pete Hegseth. All of that coming up here. We'll have it for you live and uninterrupted, as we always do. Right now, I do want to bring in a guest, a very good friend of this for folks who have only been getting bits and pieces of this. Can you break down for folks out there the whole situation that's unfolding there with
what's going on
and the strikes on the different ships out there off the coast of Venezuela? What we've seen so far and what we've watched kind of play out over the past several weeks and months.
You bet, Josh. As you and I have talked
about,
so
he's about to give us the rundown on what exactly it is going on, guys.
War on drugs. And those of us who have served kind of laugh at the term war on drugs. It's been a Vietnam on drugs. The men and women on the front lines have fought this, quote, war on drugs with both hands tied behind their back. President Trump coming in the office, he actually knows what the word war means, and he actually started executing a war on drugs. Nicolas Maduro is a narco terrorist. A grand jury, our fellow Americans up in New York, indicted this man. There was a $50 million bounty on his head. So he sat technically at the top of one of the largest
$50 million on that dude's head.
Using his authority under the law, was conducting kinetic strikes against these narco terrorists. It just kind of cracks me up that some Democrats or some folks in this country feel bad for, quote, fishermen on their narco submarines, right? Fishermen coming from Venezuela don't have, $5,000 motors, or it was comical that some folks in this country were actually supporting these narco terrorists. We lose about, I think 100,000 folks in this country to fentanyl and drug overdoses. So the president, absolutely within his authority, was conducting a no-kidding war on drugs, and we're seeing the ultimate result of it at this point, which is taking the head off the snake of this, one of the largest cartels in our hemisphere.
And one thing that's interesting here, there's actually a lot of things that are interesting, but there are still so many questions about what this means for the future of all of this, those operations off the coast of Venezuela, with the capture of Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And of course, it's important to note that we can't predict the future, but what are your thoughts and kind of feelings about what could happen if we're still going to see these strikes, or if the capture of Maduro means it's over?
Well, Josh, I'm definitely in the business of never believing it's over. I'm old enough to remember President Bush on the Abraham Lincoln, my old aircraft carrier, with the Mission Accomplished banner behind him. Now, that was mission accomplished about the Lincoln finishing their cruise, but the way it looked to the American people was, hey, the war in Iraq's over with. Donald Rumsfeld, disbanded the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police forces. Hey, this is over. It isn't over, right? It's the enemy gets a vote. We'd like to think it's over, but this just might be beginning. I'm very good friends with General Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I guarantee you he has contingency planned exhaustively for what bad could happen. How could this potentially get worse? So I'm not predicting the end of this at all. And I'd be remiss, Josh, if I didn't give a shout out. The young men and women out on the tip of the spear in the United States military have conducted an incredibly precise surgical strike and operation. The United States Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, even the Coast Guard is involved in this. So the young men and women in our United States military deserve some praise. It sounds like, I heard the president on Fox and Friends this morning. It sounds like no significant U.S. casualties, meaning hopefully everybody's got 10 fingers and 10 toes. We potentially lost a helicopter and there might have been some injuries in that. But as of now, Josh, according to some of the folks I've been talking to, no deaths on the U.S. side, which is a very good thing. So once again, this is a demonstration to the world, Josh, that the United States military is the most capable military on the planet. If you do harm to our country, we don't care if you run that country, we're going to come and get you. So shout out to the folks in the United States military. Well done. And I'm a Navy guy. I love my Navy SEALs, but this apparently was Delta Force. This is the 160th SOAR, the Night Stalkers, flying some pretty Gucci Army helicopters, and then bringing in the Delta Force. What an incredible operation, Josh. We're going to see some movies about this, but my hat's off to the United States Army for this incredible operation.
One thing I did want to ask you about, we learned from Brian Yennis over at Fox News, and of course this is from that interview you were talking about with Fox News, with President Trump a bit earlier, but he said essentially that there was practice done on a replica of the home there with Maduro and his wife where they stayed to make sure that all of this worked out correctly and that they were able to execute it. So is that a fairly standard situation? What do you make of that?
Oh, Josh, they started this stuff probably a month or two ago when they started these kinetic strikes against the drug boats. General Kane, we were pre-positioning all of these assets, right, Josh? We had the battle group down there, the amphibious group. We had
the U.S. went and basically bombed Venezuela and took their president and his wife into custody. They have been flown back to the United States after a grand jury in New York basically indicted the president of Venezuela as being like a drug dealer and put a $50 million bounty on his head.
Pre-position. When you're a foreign country and you see the United States military taking a month or two to pre-position all these assets around you, you should probably sit up straight. So just like we saw with the Bin Laden raid, they build a compound to the inch that we'll do death by planning. I mean, we will just plan it to death. And then ultimately, when the commander in charge of this operation says, you know what? We've exhausted all of our planning. We've contingency planned this. We are ready to go. And I guarantee you that's exactly what happened. And General Kane, through Secretary Hegseth, went to the president and said, we're ready to go. And they were over-prepared, I guarantee you.
As I mentioned, we are going to play for you here in a second that portion of the interview that President Trump did conduct here with Fox News. But I do want to pop this up as Brian Yennis, again, we've been talking about this, said Trump tells Fox U.S. forces practice by building an exact replica of the house where Maduro and his wife were captured. Quote, I mean, everything was pinpoint, every single they had. everything they practiced. They actually built a house which was identical to the one they went into, with all the safes, all the steel, all over the place. President Trump,
that means they had a whole map. They mapped out his whole layout of his house, guys.
In just about 30 minutes. We're, of course, going to carry that live in full, commercial-free here on Live Now from Fox. Any questions, Wiz, that you hope will potentially be answered during this news conference? What kind of questions do you still have?
Josh, I think the president gave a pretty good interview on Fox and Friends, and we're seeing it play out. So technically, I really don't have too many questions, but I have to give a shout out to the Secretary of War and the War Department. The OPSEC, the operational security on this, was tight. You know as well as I do, man, Washington, it used to leak like a sieve. As a matter of fact, this time last year,
I'm telling you, Kate, this is crazy.
For Hegseth's head for Signalgate. Remember that? Well, this thing was locked down tighter than a snare drum. I know a lot of folks running around DC, and sometimes I get a little tipper every once in a while. I got nothing, Josh, which tells me that the operational security on this was airtight. So I think you're going to hear the president obviously give us a lot of details that we didn't know, but good on the War Department for not having any leaks at all. This was a highly surgical operation that clearly the enemy didn't know about either. I mean, Josh, the Chinese delegation met with Maduro earlier. I mean, I've seen video of him shaking hands with whatever Chinese dude came to talk to him and meet with him, and then hours later, he's in U.S. custody. This is a huge message, not only to all the narco-terrorists in the region, but to China, to Russia, to Iran, and also North Korea.
Thank you,
Josh,
Dominique.
as you know, I trade the markets. Not that we should super care about this, but this is very bullish for oil. This is great for Americans. Lower oil costs, folks, at the pump directly goes to our bottom line, because he was evading sanctions, as we saw with us capturing some of these tankers. So we are tightening down on all of this. And also, Josh, Venezuela has a ton of rare earth minerals in their country, which China has been really tightening. I mean, these things go in our cell phones, our laptops, our weapons. So we didn't do it for this reason, and I want to get that clear, but it's going to have second and third order effects for the United States as well. Number one, saving the lives of folks who potentially could be killed by these drugs, and then other good things will come from this as well.
I did want to ask you one more question here based on what you were just talking about. You mentioned the fact that there were no leaks. Now, we know that when there is an operation of any kind, a lot of times there's a source or several sources who do reveal that something is going to happen. How did that maybe help the situation here, that somehow there were no leaks? Nobody knew that this was going to happen. This was a surprise to probably just about everyone when they woke up this morning.
Correct. Well, Josh, I think that's a testament to the administration and them kind of weeding out the leakers. Like after Signalgate happened, and he caught a lot of grief for this, but he didn't care. Secretary Hegseth went and clipped a lot of potential leakers. The folks on the tip of the spear.
I see a lot of y'all saying this is about all
helicopters, the Delta Force operators, the Marine, the Coasties. They're tighter than a snare drum. We know about operational security. We know that leaks can get people killed. So you weren't going to get a leak from anybody wearing a uniform. It was the leaks that were coming from folks wearing coat and ties or skirts or dresses who probably aren't too happy with who is in the White House right now. So operational security is easy when you have the right people on the team who are aligned with the mission. Operational security is very hard when you got people on board who don't want the best for you or technically for this country.
All right. Wiz, thank you so much, as always, for being here with us. Anything we missed, anything you want to make sure to add here before I let you go?
No, good question, Josh. You nailed it. But once again, shout out to the young men and women of the United States military for doing their job, for doing what we pay you to do. And please, even though this might appear over, it might not be over, please send some thoughts, some prayers, some love and light to these folks, that everybody gets home to their loved ones safe.
Wiz, thank you again for being here, as always. We definitely appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. God bless. We'll see you.
And of course, we are going to continue to follow all of this as we await those remarks coming in from President Donald Trump. That's set to happen here just about 30 minutes, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Over
30 minutes, guys, till Trump
Secretary
speaks.
of War Pete Hegseth
And we'll most definitely be here for it.
So we're going to bring you all of those commercial-free and live the second that we see that image
Ghetto
pop up.
says our
If you are
military
just
is
joining us,
unmatchable.
my name is
Okay.
Josh Breslow, and I told you that President Trump
Unmatched.
spoke a bit
Okay.
earlier with Fox News, and we now have a portion of that interview.
Let's go.
where he
Here
did
go a
talk
little bit
about
of him here.
the process of this operation and how it played out. Going to play that for you right now.
Let's go.
So you've had quite a busy evening. Tell us about it.
It was slightly busy, I would say. It was very dark all over, especially in Venezuela.
Trump speaks, guys.
The team did an incredible job. They rehearsed and practiced like nobody's ever seen. And I was told by real military people that there's no other country on earth that could do such a maneuver. If you would have seen what happened, I mean, I watched it literally like I was watching a television show. And if you would have seen the speed, the violence, you know, they say that, the speed, the violence, they use that term. It's it was an amazing thing, an amazing job that these people did. There's nobody else could have done anything like it.
You're at Mar-a-Lago right now. How were you able to watch this?
Well, we watched it from a room. We had a room, and we watched it, and we watched every aspect of it. We were surrounded by lots of people, including generals, and they knew everything that was happening, and it was very complex, extremely complex, the whole maneuver, the landings, the number of aircraft, which were a massive number, the number of helicopters, a different type of helicopters, different type of fighter jets. We had a fighter jet for every possible situation. And they just broke in, and they broke into places that were not really able to be broke into, you know, with steel doors that were put there for just this reason, and they got taken out in a matter of seconds. I've never seen anything like it, actually.
And you were able to watch this in real time.
Yeah, and don't forget, I've done some pretty good ones in other parts of the world. Okay, I've done some pretty good ones, but I've never seen anything like this. I was able to watch it in real time, and I watched every aspect of it, and I listened to the communication between, you know, where we were in Florida and out in the field in Venezuela. And it was amazing to see the professionalism, the quality of leadership, the professionalism. General Raisin Kane is fantastic. Don't forget, we did another one not so long ago. It was called the knocking out of the Iranian nuclear threat, the nuclear power. That was unbelievable what they did there. And this is something that, gee, I don't know, it's amazing. And to have a few injuries, but no death on our side is really amazing.
Mr. President, critics will say that strong action can risk escalation, but history has shown us that weakness can truly invite chaos. And this military operation clearly sends a message to our adversaries around the world, China, Iran, Russia, that we are no longer the weak administration that we had for 4 years under former President Biden, who tolerated narco-terrorism. What is next for the United States and Venezuela?
Well, we're very strong, and very importantly, if you look at drugs through the oceans, through the seas, they're down 97%. That's the boats. It's sort of related to this, as you know. The drugs are way down, and it's getting very, very tough. It's a whole different look. We have a whole different country. We have a country now that's respected. We have a country. I built the military in my first term, and they gave a little chunk of it away, but it was a lot. But it was a little chunk relative to what we built. But they gave it to Afghanistan so stupidly. It was one of the. Compare this to Afghanistan, where we were a laughing stock all over the world. We're not a laughing stock anymore. No, we have the greatest military in the world by far. We have the greatest military equipment in the world by far. And you had to see this in real time. You had to see this, the professionalism and the bravery, everything about it. And you almost couldn't hold them back.
This is Trump speaking on the airstrikes delivered to Venezuela, guys.
And most people would have said, I'll take a pass. I know that Charlie would have wanted to go because Charlie's a very brave person. But I know a lot of other people would have said, I think I'll pass on this one. let's watch it on television. It's been amazing to see how good they were, how professional they were, how incredible the equipment we have is. I mean, the level of equipment and to see how it worked so perfectly. And, you know, if you compare this to attacks on Iran over the years with, you know, helicopters crashing into each other, the whole thing was a mess. The Jimmy Carter situation, which was a mess, and every other situation compared to this, nobody's ever seen like this. Look, the Iranian attack, knocking out their nuclear power was big. We had peace in the Middle East, and we have it. Without that, you could never have peace in the Middle East. We knocked them out, and look what's happening now to Iran, but we knocked it out. That was, it could not have been better, and this could not have been better. I don't even know which is, you know, these are both really important. If you think about equal and importance, I wonder how it's going to be rated, but knocking out the nuclear power of, think of it, they were ready, they were within 2 months, they would have been a nuclear power. And comparing that to this in a certain different way, I think this might have been actually more complex.
Well, it's interesting.
That was something that was amazing.
It's interesting, Mr. President. We've looked, our own Lucas Tomlinson, our reporter here. I don't know if you knew this intentionally, but the capture of Maduro and his wife, it coincides with the 6th anniversary of your taking out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's Qasem Soleimani. Interestingly, it's six years after. But let me ask you a question, Mr. President. Because,
by the way, that was the third thing, and we have a fourth. We got Soleimani. We have taken out so many. Look at what we did to the leader of ISIS, who's no longer with us, right? And everybody was after for 20 years, and we got him. We've done a lot, but this was something, maybe because it's fresh in our minds, you know, because again, the Iranian situation was so big, knocking that out, and every single, the B-2 bomber, every single missile hit its target, and the target was an air shaft.
Right.
Dark at night. Think of that. Dark at night, no moon. You couldn't see a thing, and every missile went right through that air shaft and just obliterated the place. So that was amazing, and this was amazing.
I wonder, Mr. President, I want to ask you because from your Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that the message is pretty clear. The drug trafficking must stop. So was this operation a message that you're sending to Mexico, to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president there?
Well, it wasn't meant to be, and we're very friendly with her. She's a good woman, but the cartels are running Mexico. She's not running Mexico. The cartels are running Mexico. And we could be politically correct and be nice and say, oh, yes, she is. No, she's she's very frightened of the cartels. They're running Mexico. And I've asked her numerous times, would you like us to take out the cartels? No, Mr. President. No, please. So we have to do something because we lost. The real number is 300,000 people, in my opinion. You know, they like to say 100,000. 100,000 is a lot of people, but the real number is 300,000 people. And we lost it to drugs, and they come in through the southern border, mostly the southern border. Plenty come in through Canada, too, by the way, in case you don't know. But they come in through the southern border, and something's going to have to be done with Mexico.
Why did you decide to do this morning?
Are you talking about calling you people or the shot?
No, taking out
I'm not sure which is worse. If you want to know the truth, I'm calling you. I haven't spoken to anybody else because Charlie Hurd has been a great friend of mine for a long time. He was with me when it was not fashionable, and those are the people I like. He was with me, Charlie, when it was not at all fashionable. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And your show is great. You're doing a great job. What a good team.
But I meant, why did you make the decision to take out Maduro this morning? And what was Maduro doing when our guys came in on him?
So we were going to do this 4 days ago, but the weather was not perfect. The weather has to be perfect. And we had just the perfect weather. We had, very good. A little bit few more clouds than we thought, but it was good. We waited 4 days. We were going to do this 4 days ago, 3 days ago, 2 days ago. And then all of a sudden it opened up and we said go. And I'll tell you, it was just amazing. And what was he doing? He was in a very highly guarded, like a fortress, actually. He was in a fortress. You know, that we had nobody killed was amazing. I think we had nobody killed, I have to say, because a couple of guys were hit, but they came back and they're supposed to be in pretty good shape. But that we had nobody killed, that we lost no aircraft, you know, everything came back. We got it all back. One of them was hit pretty hard, but a helicopter, but we got it back. But it just was the right time to do it. We had to do it because it's a war. We're losing 300,000 people a year. We don't lose that much in a war, okay, if you look. And we had to do it. But into that, we were prepared. We had, you know, massive blowtorches and everything else that you need to get through that steel, but we didn't need it. He didn't make it to that area of the house.
Mr. President, your war on narco-terrorism from our southern border and beyond clearly will save American lives. Moving forward for Venezuela, what do you think is next for the Venezuelan people now that you have removed Maduro so that he can face American justice?
Well, we're making that decision now. We can't take a chance on letting somebody else run and just take over where he left or left off. So we're making that decision now. We'll be involved in it very much. And we want to do liberty for the people. We want to, you know, have a great relationship. I think the people of Venezuela are very, very happy because they love the United States. You know, they were run by essentially a dictatorship or worse. It couldn't have been worse. It was a terrible thing that was taking place in Venezuela. But look, tremendous numbers of people were being killed through drugs. And what they did to our country in sending prisoners and people from mental institutions and drug lords and everything, they sent them by the hundreds of thousands of people into our country. And that is just unforgivable. That's why, you know, he wanted to negotiate at the end, and I didn't want to negotiate. I said, nope, we got to do it. You know, he was trying to negotiate at the end. You probably saw that. And trying hard to make a deal. And I said, and, you know, this could have been a very foolish thing if it didn't work out. But I said, nope, we can't do it. What he did with drugs was bad. What he did with a lot of other things was bad. But what he did was sending hundreds of thousands of Tren de Aragua and drug dealers. And they emptied out their jails into our country. They emptied out, if you think about it, they emptied out all of their mental institutions into our country. What he did there, and every other thing, is unforgivable.
Mr. President, you're already getting reaction from members of Congress on both sides. One Democrat, Jim McGovern, is saying that you did not get authorization from Congress. And he says Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela. Wanted to get your reaction to that.
Well, look, these are weak, stupid people. And they're trying to save themselves from almost destroying our country. If I didn't get elected, our country would not, I don't even think we'd have a country right now. We were heading down the path of destruction. We had inflation, we had high prices. They're the ones that caused high prices, not us. We're bringing the prices way down. We have oil now in many places $1.99 a gallon. And, you know, when you do oil, everything follows, but everything is following. But no, they would have destroyed our country. If we didn't get elected, if Kamala or a Joe type got elected, if that group got elected, but if Kamala got elected, I don't think at this point we would even have a country. We were laughed at all over the world. We were, the money was flowing out. Everybody was leaving. The companies were leaving. The people were leaving. The wealth was leaving. We have $18 trillion coming back into our country, the biggest number in the history of the world. The second biggest number was $3 trillion. We're at $18 trillion, and it's building factories and plants. It's doing things that no country has ever seen before. But as far as last night is concerned, it was really genius. What they did is genius. And the Democrats, maybe they'll take a shot. You know, they'll take a shot. All they do is complain. They don't talk about, they should say, you know what, we did a great job. We're stopping drugs from coming into this country. And nobody's been able to do it until we came along. But they should say, great job. They shouldn't say, oh, gee, maybe it's not constitutional. You know, the same old stuff that we've been hearing for years and years and years. They did an incredible job. These men and women that went out there last night, the courage they had, going into an area where, all the lights were turned off. We turned off almost all of the lights in Caracas. I mean, this thing was so organized. And they go into a dark space with machine guns facing them all over the place. And then you hear from a guy that I'd never even heard of him, but you hear from...
All right, so again, those were some of the comments that we did receive from President Trump as he spoke over the phone with folks there at Fox News. That was just a couple hours ago. Now, I do want to remind you, coming up here in just a matter of moments, we expect that President Trump will address the nation on all of this coming in from Mar-a-Lago. We should be getting a live image as that is set to take place here at about 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to bring those to you here live as we always do. Now, as I mentioned a bit earlier, we have been combing through this indictment, 25 pages worth of information about the indictment against Maduro and his wife. And as we take a live look at this hour over Caracas here, this is in Venezuela, I do want to bring you what we learned from that, as the indictment does accuse Maduro of leading a, quote, corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking, end quote. Now, it does allege that the drug trafficking efforts, quote, enriched and entrenched Venezuela's political and military elite. U.S. authorities there alleging that Maduro partnered with, quote, some of the most violent and prolific drug traffickers and narco-terrorists in the world to bring tons of cocaine into the U.S. Again, that is according to that 25-page indictment. Authorities estimate that as much as 250 tons of cocaine were trafficked through Venezuela by 2020, and the drugs were moved on go-fast vessels, fishing boats, and container ships, or via planes from clandestine airstrips. Again, all of this coming in from those documents. Now, if you are just joining us here, President Trump revealing the U.S. launched strikes in Venezuela, and we do have video of some of that I do want to pop up on your screen right here. Again, this is from just hours ago, as President Trump says that they have captured the Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, all happening here amid Trump's war on the drug cartels, which has seen strikes on suspected drug-carrying vessels off the coast of Venezuela. And these are just some of the videos of those strikes released by the Department of War. President Trump saying that Maduro and his wife, who have both been indicted in the U.S., are now en route to New York to face prosecution, and they are en route via U.S. ship. So we should see them arrive. We should get those live images here. And of course, we'll bring those to you live as we get them. Right now, I do want to bring in a friend of the show here, Mark Chandler. He is Director of Government Relations at Coastal Carolina University and also a former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to be here with us this morning. Obviously, a lot of developments.
Oh, gosh, you're welcome. You're right. There is a lot happening today.
For sure. And first off, just as a former senior defense intelligence official, I did want to ask, based on what we know so far, what has stood out to you about the operation and really what we saw play out?
Well, I think one of the things that really stood out to me was the operational security surrounding this operation. You know, you get a lot of these operations, and the critical part to success is focused on operational security. Make sure no one knows what we're about to do, because we're putting our military forces in harm's way. And so I think the fact that they did that was critical leading up to this operation. The second thing that stands out to me was the phenomenal intelligence work behind this operation. Number one, the forces had to rehearse this for weeks. You know, there was talk you just had up there about, you know, a mock buildup of the facility where Maduro was living. And so they had to have great intelligence to be able to get the entire diagrams, the layout of that facility, where Maduro was, what we call a pattern of life. So in other words, Maduro would go to the presidential offices. He would travel this way. He would be at his house at this location. Here's the guards around him. So it takes a lot of time to develop that finite type of intelligence. So hats off not only to the operators who conducted this, but the intelligence personnel that helped build up this information to facilitate the success for this. It was critical and a great intelligence operation.
And one thing that's interesting and stood out to a lot of people, President Trump telling Fox there that, yes, There were some injuries here. However, he says it does not appear that any Americans were killed in the process. How does that kind of detail how intricate this process was for this operation? The fact that no Americans, as of right now, to our knowledge, were killed in the strikes there.
Well, again, that's absolute. It speaks to the professionalism of our military forces, especially Delta and the 160th. They're the elite of the elite when they go in and we conduct these type of operations. So not only did they have good intelligence, they rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. One of your previous guests talked about, working all your way through the rehearsal aspect so that you can be prepared for any kind of contingency that comes up in these operations. So this kind of reminds me of the Bin Laden raid. Back when we did that, we had a mock-up of the facility, and the SEALs rehearsed and rehearsed that operation tremendously to ensure that once the forces got on the objective, they knew what was likely to happen, where everything was, and they get in and they get out. It was a quick operation. I think what you see with the bombings, there was a lot of taking out some of the assets, and there's probably going to, if they reveal it, a lot of information about other aircraft flying off the coast of Venezuela, jamming communications, ensuring that the Venezuelan military could not react fast enough to stop us from conducting this operation. So they went in, they did what we call actions on the objective. They took Maduro and his wife, they captured them and then pulled out. They did that so quickly. And I believe some of the bombing campaign was to stop some of the reinforcements that would go to the palace, but also to distract the Venezuelan military, kind of think that we're coming in a different place. All of this facilitated the moves on the palace itself where Maduro was being held so that they could get in and get out as quickly as possible. I think when it comes down to it, and they reveal the details, you'll find that they were actually on the objective a very limited amount of time for something that you would consider this major an operation.
And of course, if you're watching us here, we did have that live image coming in out of Mar-a-Lago. It did go down here, but we expect the feed will come back at some point here shortly. And of course, we're going to get those full remarks from President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. We'll bring those to you in full, commercial free. That's what we do here on Live Now from Fox. Mark, what questions do you hope that maybe President Trump will answer during this news conference, or Hegseth, that maybe we don't know at this point?
Well, I'd like an update on the wounded. If there were, in fact, anybody wounded, I'd like to know about that, just so that we know that, and kind of reminder to the American populace that when we do these operations, there are human beings that we are putting in harm's way. And so I would like to hear an update on that, just to know that, one, there were no killed in action on this. We conducted the operation. And then I think what you're probably going to see, and I think some of the political opposition, whether they listen to it or not, but kind of help the American people understand the legal case that was laid out in conducting this operation. Not only was Delta involved in the 160th, but there were law enforcement personnel involved on this raid, and that goes to the legal aspect of conducting this. So perhaps lay that case out to help the American public understand a little bit better on this. As I said, maybe the opposition will understand. I don't know if you want to support Maduro, his drug capabilities that counter his narco-terrorism aspects, then you're going to argue that way anyway and not listen to the facts. So I'd like to see that. What I hope that they don't reveal are some of the intricacies of the operation itself. We know Maduro was taken to the USS Iwo Jima. That's what we call a large deck amphibious ship off the coast of Venezuela. A lot of Marines on that. So that's probably the staging ground from where the operation was conducted. Now they're going to move Maduro onward onto New York, get him onto an airfield, move him in an aircraft to New York to face the charges that he was indicted on later. So let's lay out some of those aspects, but not give all the operational details.
For sure. And I actually want to read you this statement that came in a bit earlier. We read this to you as we received it, but this is from Venezuela's defense chief, and it's on the Maduro capture. This is the Minister of Defense who said, quote, "The Venezuelan people have been victims of the most criminal military aggression by the United States. The barbarity of the invading forces has desecrated our sacred soil, even striking civilian urban areas with missiles and rockets fired from combat helicopters. We are currently gathering information on the injured and the dead. We fully support the decree declaring a state of external emergency across the entire national territory, and as a result, the men and women of the armed forces are carrying out the instructions of President Nicolas Maduro, deploying all of our capabilities. We will win. Long live the homeland, end quote. Again, that is from the Minister of Defense there in Venezuela. What does that say to you? Does that talk about escalation? Is that a threat? What do you make of that?
I think he had to come out and try to put up some machismo, if you will, for the Venezuelan populace, but not so much the Venezuelan populace, because this is not a popular regime in Venezuela. I think more for the military. He's speaking to the military, pushing back on the United States, someone that violated their sovereignty. These are kind of boilerplate statements that you'd expect. And I have to add this a little bit about him, Josh. He is one of the inner circle, Maduro's inner circle. The vice president, the interior minister, and the defense minister were all part of the same group who helped maintain this draconian control over the Venezuelan leadership and government. So I think when you look at that, I would expect him to say that. I don't see a military response from Venezuela, though. I see them really concerned about a rising on the streets, a protest against the Maduro regime. The regime has not been replaced. So now they're trying to scramble to see who's going to get in charge of these three, the vice president, interior minister, and defense minister. But they need to consolidate control of the military, because the military is what keeps them in power. So you're going to see some jockeying for that throughout the day or the next couple of days.
And there on the left-hand side of your screen, you're taking a live look over Mar-a-Lago, where those remarks should begin shortly. Now, we did have a live image that I tried to pop up there on the left-hand side of your screen. It showed a lot of press there at Mar-a-Lago for this as they were making their final preparations. Unfortunately, the shot went out by the time I took it, but we should be getting that shot back here in just a second, as those remarks are set to begin in just about 2.5 minutes here. Mark, what do we need to be watching for over the next coming hours, days, and maybe even weeks here?
Well, I think you need to go back to that statement you just had on the screen there, Josh. And I think looking at what the Venezuelan leadership, number one, how they're going to consolidate control. Do they maintain control of the military? Because as I said, that's what gives them the power. There is a chance. Venezuela has a military, not anything as capable as the United States. They could try something, and I would call it outlandish, to go against the U.S. military, try to take some sort of counteraction at their low level. They might have a modicum of success of doing something or getting close to one of our assets, but I think they're going to hold back on trying to do something significant, because they know that the U.S. military could pretty much take out anything they need to do. And we don't have a fight with the Venezuelan people. This doesn't look like we're trying to, one, overthrow a regime, two, go against the Venezuelan people. They're a repressed people by this leadership. So hopefully you could see an uprising in the streets. Again, it's going to go to how the military kind of clamps down. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see pro-Maduro protests. They're going to turn out the population. They're going to get people in the streets to make it look like Maduro was more popular than he is. So you'll see that, but it'll be choreographed. None of this is going to be a spontaneous support of Maduro across the Venezuelan population.
And I did want to mention here, it actually sounds like the news conference with President Trump might be starting on time, because again, we're waiting on that live image to come back, but we did just get the alert from the White House, which normally comes out really just a few minutes before he does walk up to the podium. So again, we're waiting on that shot to come in. We will definitely have it for you, and we'll make sure to bring it to you in full, commercial free. We also know from President Trump that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth should be there as well to possibly answer questions, but at least make remarks on the situation there. We also have these live images that are coming in here out of Caracas and other areas of Venezuela, where you can see folks who are not necessarily supporters of Maduro in the street. Many of them are actually there because they're trying to piece together exactly what has happened over the past several hours here. And I did want to get your take on this, Mark. For the new regime there in Venezuela, does the U.S., and this is based on really your expertise, I'm not sure if you'll have the full answer, but would the U.S. play any sort of role in any of that?
just clarification, Josh, were you talking about the legally elected regime that's been kind of in exile for a while? Or are you talking about how this new cabal is really taking over after Maduro left?
I'm going to say both. I want to get your take on both of those.
Okay. All right. First off, I think you are going to see a consolidation of power. There actually may be a jockeying of power. The vice president, she doesn't have a lot of control there. She doesn't necessarily have the backing of the military. So you could see either a co-leadership between the interior minister and the defense minister, or you could see one of those try to take more charge. Outside chance, you could see the military come in and say, we need to step in and take control of this. So you could have that. If
this is crazy, guys.
There, we could see a fracturing of that leadership as it goes through. I don't think we're going to be able to see the opposition just
Trump
fly
to
back
speak
into
any
Venezuela
second now,
and take
guys.
over. You're going to have to get rid of this core group of Maduro supporters, those people who were involved. I think the U.S. can increase its messaging. We can increase messaging to the Venezuelan people, but this really now has to come from within. So I think we can support the opposition, and work our way through building that case. You're going to hear a lot of noise from the international community. Violation of sovereignty. We've already heard
Trump
that from
about
Colombia
to
and
speak
Mexico.
any second
the UN's
now,
going
guys.
to speak out. Cuba, Iran, Russia, China. They're all going to speak out against the United States and the illegal operations. But I think that's just noise. Let's put that in the noise category and see what we can do to build a popular support for the legally elected president if we can get her back in the country.
I also wanted to ask you, kind of going back to something that we were talking about earlier, also want to mention that it looks like we are going to be getting that image back here shortly of President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. So that kind of indicates to us this is going to start in a matter of moments. So the second it does, you'll be able to watch it in full right here on Live Now. But one thing I do want to go back to is something that you mentioned. You were talking about the fact that there were no leaks. The information did not get out there ahead of these strikes. Based on what you've seen, is that surprising? Because normally you do have folks who behind the scenes will maybe give a tip to somebody and say, this is what's going
Let me
to
start this. Remember, I told y'all the Venezuelan people, they won't prove that that the president and his wife are alive, guys.
This morning, we're following breaking news. President Trump announcing the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro overnight during a large-scale U.S. military operation.
President Trump confirming the dictator, along with his wife, are now in U.S. custody after being flown out of the country. Maduro facing federal drug trafficking charges, and he will stand trial here in the U.S.
Video shows explosions rocking the capital of Caracas and surrounding states early this morning, and low-flying U.S. Special Operations helicopters were seen flying over the region. President Trump, who's calling it a brilliant operation, is expected to address the nation at 11 a.m. Eastern from Mar-a-Lago.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, where the commander-in-chief has been spending the holidays. Good morning, Lucas.
Good morning, Charlie. This is what we know. In a daring operation under the cover of darkness at 2 a.m. local time in Caracas, Special Operations Forces, likely the full Silver Bullet package, the National Mission Force, that would be Delta Force, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and perhaps SEAL Team 6, were launched from helicopters of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, to assault the compound where Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife were sleeping. President Trump confirming the operation in a post on Truth Social. I'll read it for you guys. Posted earlier this morning, the president said, quote,
He said the president said, quote.
The president said this operation was a successful operation launched from the United States military to assault the compound and to snatch Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. The president calling it a law enforcement operation. He says the president says he will hold a press conference at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago where we should hear more details about this operation. And this comes after months of threats from President Trump saying he will be launching strikes on land. And we just heard on Monday when the president confirmed that the CIA had carried out that drone strike ashore in Venezuela. And of course, he had said that Nicolas Maduro's time what needed to come to an end. We heard that interview with the Venezuelan president just yesterday, guys. He sounded almost desperate, saying he wanted to have conversations with the Trump administration, talking about making a deal. He did not want to, he wanted to get out of the drug business. He also wanted to make a deal on oil and have it, and perhaps have President Trump allow American companies outside of Chevron to go back into the country. But this assault on the compound
do not spam
was
the
carried
chat
out under secrecy, under the darkness of night, and clearly incredible intelligence to know exactly where the Venezuelan president was located, guys.
A stunning and daring operation, and Nicolas Maduro and his wife now in U.S. custody. Lucas Tomlinson live for us in West Palm Beach. Lucas, we'll come to you as the news warrants. We want to bring in now, though, the Fox News chief political anchor and the host of Special Report, Bret Baier. Bret, it's quite a remarkable development this morning. What do you make of it?
It is a remarkable development. Good morning. It is bold. It has been telegraphed that something like this may have been in the works for some time. The effort to charge Nicolas Maduro and have this as a law enforcement effort was key in that Truth Social post, pointing out that this is a large-scale U.S. military operation surrounding a law enforcement action, taking Nicolas Maduro into custody to face charges in the U.S., he and his wife. As you see these shots overnight, obviously we started getting word the early morning hours of these explosions, and as time went on, it became evident that this was a large-scale operation, largely designed to protect the special ops mission that Lucas Tomlinson just talked about, and this essentially a snatch and grab operation. Now, I heard you guys talking to Brian Kilmeade earlier about how long this may have been going on. It may have been planned a long time, and we're going to get a lot of the firm details from that 11 a.m. news conference at Mar-a-Lago with the president and arguably a lot of members of his cabinet. As you look live at Caracas, Venezuela, at first light, we'll get a better sense of what exactly was attacked, but it was these military bases to protect this effort to get Maduro and his wife out. And I think the world is reacting, but in a muted way. Because it had long been thought that this was a narco-terrorist leader who was working with cartels. And the president has signaled that he wanted to bring that to an end.
So you will be anchoring our coverage of that 11 a.m. press conference. How specific do you think President Trump will be in those details? And maybe more importantly, how do you see the politics of this playing out domestically?
Yeah, you know, I think he'll be pretty specific because there are a lot of criticism already on the yeah, exactly. He likes the win. He already talked briefly to the New York Times overnight in a phone call right after the Truth Social post, saying it was a huge success. I think we'll hear a lot more about that and the specifics of the operation. But he also is going to talk about a warning to the rest of those countries down there, Colombia in particular. You know, he's singled the Colombian president out already about its efforts in the drug trade. This is a different operation. There was already a lot of political upheaval inside the MAGA movement and on the right that we were going to get engaged in a long
Trump is about to get ready to speak,
on
guys.
a country that, much like Iraq, we just shouldn't be on the ground long term. It is have their own country deal with the problems. The president, in a speech in Saudi Arabia, talked about that America First policy and how he sees it through his eyes. And he said, we want to help you, and we want to make sure that you're good to us, in not so many words, but to not be the occupier. And I think that is what we're seeing here. The scale of this operation, pretty limited.
Bret, this precise and extremely swift operation is seemingly very successful, resulting in the capture of Maduro and his wife being flown to the United States to sit trial. But if the remaining regime is still in place, will this still be considered widely successful in 48 hours? I mean, what is it on the United States to ensure that this regime does not stay in power?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there has to have been some groundwork with people on the ground. You have heard that the CIA was on the ground in Venezuela for a number of weeks. Obviously, the armada that we've seen surrounding Venezuela by the U.S. military has created its own pressure and tension. But my guess, and I don't know if we'll hear about this at the news conference or not, is that there have been discussions on the ground with the opposition forces as well as people inside.
Make sure if you haven't double tapped that screen, guys, that's what you do to hit the like button. Double tap that screen. If you're on the mobile device, to click the three dots, hit the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new.
Leaders of Venezuela take over and take control. So there has been an effort to prepare for that for some time, and I would assume that the U.S. is well aware, if not a part of those efforts.
You know, walking that out just a little bit, Brett, so the only really communication we've gotten from the current Maduro regime in Venezuela after this strike and then this operation is the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, went on state TV in Venezuela and demanded proof of life, saying that the whereabouts of President Maduro and his wife were unknown. We obviously know where they are, but that is his reaction. And in Venezuela's constitution, power passes from the president to the vice president. And so when we consider whether or not the U.S. had communication on the ground, even with opposition leaders, it strikes me that the immediate aftermath here politically in that country as to who's running it and who will take power could become quite messy.
I agree, and there have to be answers to that. I think that's a big question for the 11 a.m. news conference with the president and his team. You're right, that is the only official we've heard from, the Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez, and the proof of life. I just thought it was interesting if you all could put up that Truth Social again and just look at the specific wording that the president uses in the planning of this. And, you know, specifically saying it's a U.S. military operation and a law enforcement operation and a negotiated effort to get Maduro out. And there you see the Truth Social successfully carrying out this large-scale strike against Venezuela. And then it goes on to say he's been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. The operation was in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. There has been this effort, I think, to figure out how to get Maduro out. And I think we're going to see whether this had Maduro's it doesn't seem like it had his blessing, but somehow had some orchestration on the ground in Venezuela.
Well, to your point, in that article in Vanity Fair last month, Susie Wiles told Vanity Fair over lunch, Wiles told me about Trump's Venezuela strategy, her saying, he wants to keep blowing up boats until Maduro cries uncle. And people way smarter than me on that will say that he will cry uncle. So, as you point out, this has been a pretty long game that the administration has been playing.
Yeah, definitely, a cat and mouse game. And, you know, it was very bizarre that this video pops up of Maduro in a car doing an interview in a dash cam kind of video with saying he'll do whatever the U.S. wants. You know, I think that he knew the time had run out and there was imminent action that was coming. But he was essentially saying, you want us to work with you, you want us to work on oil, you want us to do this, we're happy to do it. He's talking about the conversation he had with President Trump in November, and it was very cordial. And since then, it had not been so cordial. You know, obviously things had come to an end for Nicolas Maduro, who was not the legitimate elected president of Venezuela.
You obviously follow this stuff very, very closely. Are you surprised that countries like Cuba and China and Russia have not played a stronger hand in trying to protect him in the last couple of days?
I think they felt it was futile too, and I'm not surprised that they haven't stepped in. I think they have their own hands full in different ways around the globe. China, Russia, Cuba. Cuba is worried about getting its oil from Venezuela. Essentially, Cuba is on the brink of falling too if they can't get support. Venezuela was their biggest conduit to that, so they're going to have to work that out. So listen, the map changes, and President Trump has changed the map already with action in Iran, as mentioned before. I think you're starting to see that map change now. And maybe a real question is China's influence in Latin America and what that looks like going forward from here.
You know, Brad, you are our great historian here at the network. You just wrote a great book about President Teddy Roosevelt. And now as we look at what President Trump has done, I'm struck by Florida Congressman Carlos Jimenez has reacted this morning, comparing what has just happened to the fall of the Berlin Wall. Put that in historical context for us.
Well, yeah, so he's coming from a perspective of, for the people of Venezuela, this is a big moment. I think we have to get from point A to point B to your question earlier about how this regime moves on, how the opposition takes over, all of that. But he's using that comparison because it's this freedom. And the sense in Venezuela on the ground is that they wanted this to be over. They wanted this regime to be done. There wasn't a lot of popular support for Maduro. He was trying to insinuate that there was by dancing on stages and singing. But, you know, the people that were in those crowds were told to be there. And they voted him out twice. But
wow,
I think that the analogy is
guys.
The piece.
So is Trump doing Venezuela a favor by taking this guy into U.S. custody? Let me know.
Amazing change. You know, you talk about Teddy Roosevelt. He was a kind of a peace through strength guy as well. And if you look at the actions of President Trump, the concerns about his legal authority, Mike Lee and others, I think they're going to talk about the scope of this and how limited it is, actually. But it yet is making a big change in the actions that they're taking.
But there is no such thing as peace through strength without a strong military. And President Trump has continued to show that with the operations that they have performed. You know, under President Biden essentially treated Maduro as a pest, as a nuisance. Instead, he rolled back the sanctions, he reopened oil, and he legitimized essentially his leadership by meeting with him. You know, we saw that weird video from the car yesterday from Maduro. Do you think that's because he had insight into what was going on? And do you think it was right that President Trump said, we are not going to legitimize you as leadership? We're not coming to the negotiation table. We have a red line, and we have to show that consequences, these are the consequences of essentially running your country into the ground and being a dictator.
Yeah, I mean, he did set a red line, and obviously this was a person who was indicted and is going to face a trial. I don't know where he's going to be, whether it's in Miami or elsewhere, but it is something that was talked about for a long time, and he's living up to that moment. I agree with your assessment that, you know, some of these leaders, if they get a little bit, they take a lot, and it gives them a lot of leeway in their country without the pressure. Obviously, all of the U.S. military off the coast of Venezuela was massive pressure, not only on Maduro, but on his regime, on the rest of Latin America, as they looked at all of the firepower that was in the Caribbean and is in the Caribbean. I would assume that once you see this transition happen to the legitimately elected government, that all changes and our force posture changes as well.
Hey, Brett, quickly, I want to get to the politics of this, because we're already seeing Congressman Jim McGovern saying that this was unauthorized and that Congress was not notified. I saw another member of the Senate Armed Services Committee in the minority saying that they weren't notified. Do you see this as kind of a big political battle we're about to see play out in Washington?
Yes, and I will say there is criticism in the past for the Trump administration as far as notifying, especially the top tier of Congress, the leadership, and the Intelligence Committee chairs and ranking members. And there there are real questions about whether they should have been briefed, whether they should have been briefed in this case, in the Iran case, how that happened. And, you know, I'm sure there will be questions about that at 11 o'clock. But on the politics, just the pure politics, stopping narco-terrorism and drugs flowing into the U.S. is very popular, no matter how you ask the question on polls. Venezuelans inside the U.S. saying Nicolas Maduro facing justice, being pulled out of the country, and a transition to the elected government. The Venezuelans inside the U.S., that is very popular. It's a 90-10 issue, and if not 100. And I think that the politics of this, to argue the other way, is something that's going to be dangerous. But I think that the letting Congress know, there may be criticism that's legitimate there.
Yeah, on the pure politics side of this, it's such a great point. Because, of course, obviously we're going to see a lot of pure politics, but it's going to be playing out as we see an actual court trial.
We're waiting on Trump, guys.
At the same time, in real time. And it's going to make it a lot more difficult to sort of, for Democrats in particular, to kind of thread that needle.
Yes, and that'll be front and center. It'll be all of the charges, all of the lists of the charges that Maduro faces, the specifics. All of it will come front and center if this goes as projected. And we've heard Secretary Rubio debrief Senator Lee about the process. And at least so far, Senator Lee, Mike Lee of Utah, is pleased, and he's one of the guys that was raising concerns about the parameters.
Right.
Well, we look forward to hearing more straight from the president about this morning's military operation. And Brett, you will be hosting special coverage of the president's address at 11 a.m. Eastern from Mar-a-Lago. Thank you so much for joining us, Brett Baer.
Thanks, Brett.
You bet. See you later.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click.
Yeah, man, we're still waiting on Trump to basically to speak.
Ha visto a un puñado de hombres libres vencer imperios poderosos. No somos un puñado de hombres, somos millones de hombres y mujeres libres, conscientes de que tenemos patria.
Once again, these are the people of Venezuela, guys. Look like everybody is waiting on Trump to speak.
Instagram, en cada TikTok, generar la plataforma de denuncia internacional, porque esto, compañeros, es apenas el preámbulo de las pretensiones imperialistas. Denunciemos a Donald Trump y exigimos que rescaten, que regrese nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro y nuestra hermana valiente, una mujer extraordinaria, como todas las mujeres venezolanas, nuestra hermana Cilia Flores de Maduro. Bendiciones para el pueblo de Caracas. Sigamos en la calle, te invitamos, hermano, así como llegamos aquí nosotros, vente que aquí estamos concentrados en la defensa de Nicolás Maduro. Gracias, Quevedo. Compatriota diputado Bracho, adelante.
Y a la patria. Hoy en Caracas amaneció de golpe. Hoy decimos, amaneció de golpe en una infame acción, asesina acción del presidente Donald Trump con nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro. Yo le vengo a decir hoy que a la petición que hace nuestra camarada Delcio Rodríguez, que es la fe de vida, le exijamos la presencia, que nos entregue de una vez sanos y salvos al presidente Nicolás Maduro y a la primera dama Cilia Flores. Es una exigencia y en honor a ese mandato que tanto nos viene impulsando el camarada.
Whatever they're saying.
Cuando el camarada decía calle, redes y paredes, tenemos que salir todos y todas a salir a pintar todas las paredes de Caracas, exigiendo la liberación inmediata de nuestro camarada presidente Nicolás Maduro y obviamente a la primera dama. En patria para todos decimos, o hay patria para todos o no hay patria para nadie. ¿A qué decimos? Tenemos patria para todos con Nicolás y con Cilia al frente. Estamos diciendo y vamos
As Trump is fashionably late, guys.
Gracias, Bracho. Camarada diputada Griselda Olivero, adelante.
Bueno, compatriotas, creo que mis camaradas han dicho bastante sobre todo. Ese desgraciado venía diciendo qué iba a hacer. Pero nosotros Nos hemos venido preparando para nosotros contrarrestar esto. Ahora tenemos que demostrar nuestra capacidad organizativa en el territorio. Nosotros tenemos que estar en rebelión, como lo dijo nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro. ¿Qué dijo el presidente? Rebelión popular. Paro general.
Hey, Belinda.
Nosotros no podemos permitir que vengan para acá a hacer lo que les da la gana. Porque aquí hay traidores. Aquí hay gente celebrando eso. Ellos tienen gente aquí haciendo eso. Así que nosotros tenemos la responsabilidad, compañeros, de demostrarle el nivel de organización que hemos alcanzado. No es poca cosa lo que hemos construido en 26 años. Hemos tenido paz en medio de la guerra, pero nunca permitimos que se metieran. Pues ahorita no podemos permitir que entre y exigir que nos entreguen a nuestro presidente y a nuestra primera dama.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to CNN. I'm Victor Blackwell in Atlanta. The breaking news this morning, President Trump says the U.S. carried out large-scale strikes on Venezuela overnight. Now, it's quiet in the capital of Caracas just hours after the strikes, but earlier, explosions rocked Venezuela, knocked out power, and sent people running outside.
Man.
And this strike was at La Carlota Air Base in Caracas. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh joins me now from London. Nick, we just heard from Issa Suarez speaking with some of her sources in country about the fear of what could come next because so many questions are unanswered.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through what we know has happened so far. Since about 1 a.m. local time, and these series of explosions rocked Caracas and other parts of Venezuela, multiple helicopters seen in the air, and then clearly a U.S. Special Forces operation that removed Nicolás Maduro and his wife from what should have been their heavily fortified and secured premises in the capital there. Hard to understate quite what a move this is geopolitically by the Trump White House to remove the sitting president of a country which it considers to be a regional irritant. Startling, successful, certainly, daring, certainly as well, and also efficient, frankly, given what it seems the brevity, comparatively, of this operation and the impact that it is having. The Attorney General, Pam Bondi, hinting that the indictments in the Southern District of New York Court will be the ones that Maduro faced. He had a $50 million bounty on his head, seeking information that could lead towards his capture, and it may well be that the delay we're seeing since Trump's tweet in the early hours of this morning, his 74-word social media post that removed the extraordinary mystery, frankly, or the unresponsibility of exactly what was happening in the skies of Caracas, very quickly to explain that, as many suspected, it was the US military behind this. It now appears that potentially the delay may be about transferring Maduro inside American soil for when President Trump addresses the nation about this move, extraordinary as it is. But I think once perhaps for Trump allies, the exhilaration of removing Maduro, who has been an authoritarian dictator behind violence against protesters and opponents for 13 years. Once that fades, the hard questions now must be answered about what to do with Venezuela's crippled economy. That has been the reason why Maduro has needed to be authoritarian, the mismanagement of basic things like inflation foodstuffs that permeates that entire country. What happens now to Venezuela's military, heavily hit during this brief series of strikes? Should point out the explosions we've been seeing in these videos, utterly alien to life in sleepy, peaceful Caracas, will have terrified the millions who live there. What is the likely course for Venezuela's political elite? Is indeed Delcy Rodriguez the successor? Does she immediately seek a detente with the United States to prevent a similar abduction in the middle of the night occurring to her? These are all urgent questions, and I think the key thing here is for the United States to have planned for the aftermath of Maduro with the same efficiency, detail, and resolve as they clearly planned
his capture and abduction. The US military, very good at this sort of thing, be it bin Laden in Pakistan, Zawahiri, the al-Qaeda leader in Afghanistan, Maduro, a man with lesser charges against him in Venezuela, but they fail repeatedly in what comes next. And I'm sure many in Venezuela will be deeply hoping that they now see some sort of future ahead of them where their economic and political problems become part of the United States focus and they're not just left to see further collapse. A reminder, the United States, particularly the Trump administration, want to see many of the hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans on US soil go home. And perhaps a calm and prosperous Venezuela would permit that to happen at a faster pace. But we are today in unprecedented territory. In Moscow and Beijing, they will be looking at how their ally, Maduro, is suddenly whisked away from a place where he should have felt security of diplomacy, of the international world order. He may now soon be in a New York courthouse to face drug charges.
Now, Russia, as I said a moment ago, is now asking for immediate clarification on the U.S. claims that it has captured Maduro.
They'll probably get that.
Yeah. Nick Payton-Walsh, thanks so much. Joining us now is CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak. Kevin, again, we're going to hear from the president at 11 a.m. Eastern, 3 hours from now. But I understand you have some new information about how this unfolded. What do you know?
Yeah, and what we understand is that the president gave the green light for this operation several days ago. That's according to people familiar with the matter. It was carried out by the elite Delta Force in the U.S. Army. That's the same group that captured Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi some years ago. So a highly trained a force that went in to capture Maduro. They were tracking his location with the assistance of the CIA, and we know that the president had authorized the CIA to operate covertly inside of Venezuela, some weeks ago. We saw some of what they were doing just this week when we learned about that strike on a dock facility that the president said was transporting drugs. But now we're getting a fuller picture of what precisely that agency was doing there. Now, the goal here is to try Maduro on U.S. soil. We've been hearing that from officials. We just heard it explicitly from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who is citing that indictment in the Southern District of New York that was filed back in 2020. There was this bounty on Maduro, and what Bondi says is that both Maduro and his wife will soon face the full wrath of American justice on American soil in American courts. But to be sure, there are plenty of questions here being raised by members of Congress. It does not appear as if the Trump administration briefed, the relevant lawmakers or the relevant committees before taking that action. And this morning, it appears that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has been on the phone talking to senators to discuss some of what happened, and some of them are revealing a little bit about their discussion. Mike Lee, the senator from Utah, said that the strikes that occurred in Venezuela were intended to protect the U.S. personnel who were capturing Maduro, that the president was relying on his Article 2 authority, essentially his authority as commander-in-chief to conduct foreign policy, to carry out these strikes. And I think most critically, what Rubio told Lee was that he anticipates no further action in Venezuela now that Maduro is in U.S. custody. So this appears to be it for now, what we've seen overnight. This is really the culmination of this months-long pressure campaign. There was, I think, some misgivings on the part of the president some months ago about where all of this was leading. We heard that from officials, that he had some reservations that this could potentially all backfire if Maduro was ousted from power, some questions about whether this would be effective, but clearly he has put those to the side and given the green light to go ahead. I think President Trump is also of the era who will remember a mixed history of U.S. interventions in Latin America, including with the CIA. Today is 35 years exactly since the U.S. arrested the Panamanian dictator, Manuel Noriega, at the Vatican Embassy in Panama. So, there is a long, somewhat mixed history for the president to look back on here, but clearly eager to proclaim success in this particular mission, and I think eager to show that justice will be served for what they claim is a drug trafficking charge. The objectives in all of this have always, in a way, led to regime change. That was what the president's ultimate goal was here. We heard that explicitly from Susie Wiles in that Vanity Fair interview. But you also saw a number of different sort of rationales that the president has laid out, whether it was curbing the flow of drugs, whether it was curbing the flow of migrants. You also hear the president talk quite a bit about the oil. Of course, Venezuela is sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves. And so I think when we hear from the president over at Mar-a-Lago down here in Palm Beach at 11 a.m., it's likely that we're going to hear sort of a combination of all of that. And certainly, I think the question of what happens next in Venezuela, what the president has been planning on that front, whether the U.S. sort of has any role or anticipates any role in stabilizing that country now that the leader has left, those will be critical questions that the president, I think, will need to answer for when we see him in a few hours from now.
And Democrats in the Senate are already asking those questions, as we're seeing on social media. Kevin Liptak, thanks so much.
As we wait on Trump.
If you're just waking up this morning, we are following breaking news. President Trump announcing the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro overnight during a large-scale U.S. military operation.
President Trump confirming the dictator, along with his wife, are now in U.S. custody after being flown out of the country. Maduro facing federal drug trafficking charges, and he will stand trial here in the U.S.
Video shows explosions rocking the capital of Caracas and surrounding states early this morning, and low-flying U.S. Special Operations helicopters were seen flying over the region. President Trump, who's calling it a brilliant operation, is expected to address the nation at 11 a.m. Eastern from Mar-a-Lago.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, where the commander-in-chief has been spending the holidays. Good morning, Lucas.
Good morning, Charlie. This is what we know.
Forces as well going after Maduro in the dead of night, capturing him and his wife. U.S. forces had been practicing this, President Trump said. They built a building. This sounds so much like the death of bin Laden, building a compound, knowing exactly where you go. This would be standard for something like the Delta Force or Navy SEALs to go into an area that they knew that they had been surveilling, likely from drones. And as we said earlier, a source telling us that there was also a CIA clandestine team on the ground watching Maduro for several weeks, getting his pattern of life, that so-called pattern of life, where he goes, what are the movements, who are with him, what kind of security does he have around him, and building, I would imagine, likely from some sort of asset on the ground, some sort of person who knows Maduro, knows his pattern of life, what exactly that palace looks like, where he sleeps, where they could enter that building, where that safe room was that they say he never made it into, even though they said those forces were prepared to breach those doors. But I guess we have the president coming out here soon with.
All right, Martha. Yes, as you noted right there, President Trump is entering the room here, heading to the podium to speak from Mar-a-Lago about this really extraordinary strike on Venezuela, taking President Nicolas Maduro and his wife into custody. Once again, we also learned today about that superseding indictment, new charges facing Maduro, and here is President Trump from Mar-a-Lago.
Okay, thank you very much. This is big stuff. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today. Late last night. At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones, like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer. all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We're a respected country again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest and most fearsome military on the planet by far. With capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country. The proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows,
so America's going to run Venezuela. Wow.
Bust for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that. The first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave.
This is Trump on what took place in Venezuela, guys. Actually. This is live.
This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solis, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, the many, many Americans.
Thank you.
Thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship they'll be heading to, ultimately, New York. And then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida. But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal. But they're not so brutal now. And I just have to...
He said they not so brutal now. Let's go, Trump.
And everybody in our National Guard. Because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly. And now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago. A little bit of a different kind of a threat. But we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6-7 months. We used to have two, on average 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're going, they're walking their daughters, they're walking their children, their wives, they walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. Been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now, and crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana. And we have done that. It was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing. And we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there. When they need us, we'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people, and now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst, they say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungari from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungari, what happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. It was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property. So this is about all. Considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot. by a real lot. They now call it the Donroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist, Maduro, is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's a fantastic man. I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the president said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry, and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men. And I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve. The most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out.
Oh my goodness.
President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026. And under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our chairman, Chairman Raising Cane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again. Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets. In early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49. And there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. there were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Iwo Jima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration, the Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognized him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States. And the president addressed it. There's a president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy. But instead, he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody. But don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that, I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Is that a message for Cuba? Mr. President.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Mr. President.
You said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. So who's in power right now?
Well, we're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. And we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be. As you know, it was just a minor flow. It was actually a minor flow for what they have. But we're going to run it properly. We're going to make sure the people of Venezuela are taken care of. We're going to make sure the people that were forced out of Venezuela by this thug are also taken care of.
Mr. President, does the U.S. running the country mean that U.S. troops will be on the ground? How will that work?
Well, you know, they always say boots on the ground. Oh, so we're not afraid of boots on the ground if we have to have. We had boots on the ground last night at a very high level, actually. We're not afraid of it. We don't mind saying it. But we're going to make sure that that country is run properly. We're not doing this in vain. This is a very dangerous attack. This is an attack that could have gone very, very badly. Could have gone very badly. We could have lost a lot of people last night. We could have lost a lot of dignity. We could have lost a lot of equipment. The equipment is less important, but we could have lost a lot. And we're going to make sure that this is proper. We're there now. We're ready to go again if we have to. We're going to run the country right. It's going to be run very judiciously, very fairly. It's going to make a lot of money. We're going to give money to the people. We're going to reimburse people that were taken advantage of. We're going to take care of everybody. It's very important. We couldn't let them get away with it. You know, they stole our oil. We built that whole industry there. And they just took it over like we were nothing. And we had a president that decided not to do anything about it. So we did something about it. We're late, but we did something about it. Yeah, please.
Are you explaining the exact mechanism by which you're going to run the country? Are you going to designate a U.S. official to coordinate?
Yes, it's all being done right now. We're designating people. We're talking to people. We're designating various people, and we're going to let you know who those people are.
What's the group you mentioned that would run Venezuela?
Well, it's largely going to be, for a period of time, the people that are standing right behind me. We're going to be running it. We're going to be bringing it back. It's a dead, you know, I talk about a dead country. A year and a half ago, we were a dead country. Now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We're a country doing better than any country anywhere in the world. And it required leadership. Venezuela has a lot of bad people in there, a lot of bad people that shouldn't be leading. We're not going to take a chance that one of those people take over for Maduro. So you can look at, and others, we have fantastic people, including people in the military. So we're going to have a group of people running it until such time as it can be put back on track, make a lot of money for the people, and give people a great way of life, and also reimbursement for people in our country that were forced out of Venezuela.
Rubio would be...
You said earlier today that you weren't going to back Machado to come back and be the opposition leader in your Fox and Friends interview. And then you also mentioned the vice president of Venezuela. Are you going to work with the vice president of Venezuela, or how do you foresee the relationship
going? I understand she was just sworn in, but she was, as you know, picked by Maduro. So Marco's working on that directly. He just had a conversation with her, and she's essentially willing to do what we think is necessary to make Venezuela great again. Very simple.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today, he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So, just what your message is about that.
He has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass.
Did you notify any members of Congress in advance?
Marco, do you want to talk about that? Because you were involved in it.
Sure. We call members of Congress immediately after. This was not the kind of mission that you can do congressional notification on. It was a trigger-based mission in which conditions had to be met night after night. We watched and monitored that for a number of days. So it's just simply not the kind of mission you can call people and say, hey, we may do this at some point in the next 15 days. But it's largely a law enforcement function. Remember, at the end of the day, at its core, this was an arrest of 2 indicted fugitives of American justice, and the Department of War supported the Department of Justice in that job. Now, there are broader policy implications here, but it's just not the kind of mission that you can pre-notify because it endangers the mission.
Well, sir, if I could add one thing to that. Congress has a tendency to leak. This would not be good. If they leaked, General, I think it would have been maybe a very different result. But I have to say, they knew we were coming at some point, you know. We had a lot of ships out there. They sort of knew we were coming. We went there. But Congress will leak, and we don't want leakers.
President, you were one of the only people to watch this all play out live. What was Maduro doing when the U.S. forces entered what I assume would be his home? And also, was there any point where the U.S. was considering, if Maduro pushed back or resisted, killing Maduro?
It could have happened. It could have happened. He was trying to get into a safe place. You know what a safe place is, all steel. And he wasn't able to make it to the door because our guys were so fast. They went through the opposition so fast. And there was a lot of opposition. You know, people were wondering, did we get them by surprise? Sort of surprised, but they were waiting for something. It was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of gunfire. You saw some of it today. But he was trying to get to a safe place, which wasn't safe because we would have had the door blown up in about 47 seconds, they say on average, regardless of how thick the steel was. It was a very thick door. It was a very heavy door, but he was unable to get to that door. He made it to the door. He was unable to close it.
So go ahead,
finish.
Where is Maduro going to be in the time being right now? Do you know his exact
Well,
whereabouts?
eventually, ultimately, in the near future, he's going to be brought to New York.
And where is he going to be held? Where is he going to be held in New York? Do you know?
That's going to be up to the officials that do these things.
Mr. President, the U.S. has something of a mixed track record of ousting dictators without necessarily a plan for what comes afterwards. Did that weigh on your decision?
Well, that's why we had different presidents, but with me, that's not true. With me, we've had a perfect track record of winning. We win a lot, and we win. If you look at Soleimani, you look at al-Baghdadi, you look at the Midnight Hammer. Midnight Hammer was incredible. Right now, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. We have essentially peace in the Middle East because of that. If we weren't successful with Midnight Hammer, you wouldn't have peace in the Middle East. So, with me, you've had a lot of victory. You've had only victories. You've had no losses. Yeah.
President, can you? How long do you expect the U.S. to run Venezuela, and how soon do you want the Venezuelan people to hold elections?
So I'd like to do it quickly, but it takes a period of time. You know, we're rebuilding. We have to rebuild their whole infrastructure. The infrastructure is rotted. It's actually very dangerous. It's blow-up territory. Oil is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous thing to take out of the ground. Can kill a lot of people. It has killed a lot of people doing just that. The infrastructure is old. It's rotted. Much of it is stuff that we put there 25 years ago, and we're going to be replacing it. And we're going to take a lot of money out so that we can take care of the country. Yeah.
Are you saying that Secretary Rubio and
Mr. President, China, Russia, and Iran have interests in Venezuela. How does this operation affect your relationships with them when it comes to oil and drugs?
And Russia, Russia when we get things straightened out. But in terms of other countries that want oil, we're in the oil business. We're going to sell it to them. We're not going to say we're not going to go into it. In other words, we'll be selling oil probably in much larger doses because they couldn't produce very much because their infrastructure was so bad. So we'll be selling large amounts of oil to other countries, many of whom are using it now, but I would say many more will come.
Are you saying that, Mr. President, are you saying that?
Mr. President, thank you. What is your message to the people of Venezuela today? Of course, the civilian population specifically, they have a lot of questions. What is your message to the people of Venezuela?
You're going to have peace, justice. You're going to have some of the riches that you should have had for a long period of time was stolen from you. But you're going to have peace and you're going to have safety. You're going to have justice. You're going to have a country. You're going to have a real country. You're going to have potentially a great country. You know, if you go back 20 years, maybe even a little longer ago, that was a great country. And they destroyed it. Remember I said that if we lose this election, the United States will be Venezuela on steroids. That's what would have happened. Had we lost the election, the 2024 election, we suffered so badly. When you look at the border from 2020, what they did, what Joe Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. But if we had to go through another year of that, we would be exactly where Venezuela was in terms of, I used to say, if they win, we're going to be Venezuela on steroids, and that's what would have happened.
President, thank you. Are you saying that Secretary Hegseth and Rubio are going to be running Venezuela, and will you be sending in U.S. military
They're going
troops
to be a
to provide?
team that's working with the people of Venezuela to make sure that we have Venezuela right. Because for us to just leave, who's going to take over? I mean, there is nobody to take over. You have a vice president who's been appointed by Maduro. And right now she's the vice president, and she's, I guess, the president. She was sworn in as president just a little while ago. She had a long conversation with Marco, and she said, we'll do whatever you need. I think she was quite gracious, but she really doesn't have a choice. We're going to have this done right. We're not going to just do this with Maduro, then leave like everybody else, leave and say, let it go to hell. If we just left, it has zero chance of ever coming back. We'll run it properly. We'll run it professionally. We'll have the greatest oil companies in the world go in and invest billions and billions of dollars and take out money, use that money in Venezuela. And the biggest beneficiary are going to be the people of Venezuela. And also, I can't stress this strongly enough, the people that got thrown out of Venezuela that are now in the United States, and frankly, some want to stay and some probably want to go back, yeah.
What's being done to protect Americans in the country, and were any of the detained Americans?
Well, right now they're very protected because nobody's going to mess with us. They're very protected. The people of, and we let them know that you better not touch one of them.
Are you concerned that bad elements of the Maduro regime will remain in place?
Well, we know who they are. We're on them, and they're acting much differently now than they would have acted 2 days ago. Okay, wait, behind you, please.
Mr. President, why is running a country in South America America first?
Well, I think it is because we want to surround ourselves with good neighbors. We want to surround ourselves with stability. We want to surround ourselves with energy. We have tremendous energy in that country. It's very important that we protect it. We need that for ourselves. We need that for the world. And we want to make sure we can protect it. Yes, sir. Please, go ahead.
Is there a message here for Cuba and Diaz-Canel?
Well, Cuba's an interesting case. Cuba is, not doing very well right now. That system has not been a very good one for Cuba. The people there have suffered for many, many years. And I think Cuba is going to be something we'll end up talking about because Cuba is a failing nation right now, very badly failing nation. And we want to help the people. It's very similar in the sense that we want to help the people in Cuba, but we want to also help the people that were forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Do you want to say something about that, Marco, please?
Well, I mean, I just gave you a statement a few minutes ago about, when the president speaks, you should take him seriously. So suffice it to say, Cuba is a disaster. It's run by incompetent, senile men, and in some cases, not senile, but incompetent nonetheless. It has no economy. It's in total collapse. And by the way, they were, all of the guards that helped protect Maduro, this is well known, their whole spy agency, all that were full of Cubans. I mean, it's amazing. This poor island took over Venezuela in some cases. One of the biggest problems that Venezuelans have is they have to declare independence from Cuba. They tried to basically colonize it from a security standpoint. So, yeah, look, if I lived in Havana and I was in the government, I'd be concerned, at least a little bit.
Cutting off the oil flow to Cuba from Venezuela?
Well, the president already announced a week ago that anything that's sanctioned oil, it's not going to be allowed to get there. So that's a pre-existing.
Mr. President.
The answer is yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Is the U.S. aware of the location of opposition leader Machado, and have you been in contact with her?
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Mr. President.
Mr.
President, on Monday.
Oh, I think it would be very tough for her to be the leader. She doesn't have the support within or the respect within the country. She's a very nice woman, but she doesn't have the respect to be.
Mr. President, is it possible that the U.S. ends up administrating Venezuela for years?
Well, it won't cost us anything because the money coming out of the ground is very substantial. So it's not going to cost us anything. We want safety there. We want to be surrounded by countries that aren't housing all of our enemies all over the world. That's what was happening, and you don't want to have that. But we're going to be rebuilding, and we're not spending money. The oil companies are going to go in. They're going to spend money. We're going to take back the oil that, frankly, we should have taken back a long time ago. A lot of money is coming out of the ground. We're going to get reimbursed for all of that. We're going to get reimbursed for everything that we spend. So it's going to be it's going to be a very important, this is a very big evening that took place last night. We have to be surrounded by safe, secure countries. And we also have to have energy, very important. We have to have energy that's real energy, not where they're getting 4% and 5% of the energy out of the ground. You take a look, it was such a disaster. So what's going to happen with Venezuela, I think, over the next period of a year, is going to be a great thing, and the people of Venezuela will be the biggest beneficiaries.
U.S. military. Mr. President, thank you. What did you last speak to Maduro about when you spoke? And is the
Well, I don't want to get into the conversations, but I did have conversations with him, and I said, you got to surrender. And I actually thought he was pretty close to doing so, but now he wished he did, yeah.
Mr. President, can you explain, you said that Maduro is responsible for drug trafficking. You recently pardoned the former president of Honduras who was convicted of many drug trafficking. Can you explain how these two situations are
Well,
would you ever pardon Maduro?
I endorsed, as you know, the winning president, the man who won in Honduras. I endorsed the man who won in Chile. I endorsed the man who won in Argentina, and we are doing very well with that whole group. What the man that I pardoned was, if you could equate it to us, he was treated like the Biden administration treated a man named Trump. That didn't work out too well for them. This was a man who was persecuted very unfairly. He was the head of the country. He was persecuted very unfairly, and there are a number of them. And we felt that it was a very unfair situation that happened to him. He's also a party member of the man who won. So obviously the people liked what I did. And one of the reasons that was done is because of the fact that the party in power felt very strongly that that man was treated very badly. I studied it very quickly, and then I studied it in great detail. I went to a lot of the people standing behind me, and they felt that that man was persecuted and treated very badly. That's why I gave him a pardon.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that
Well,
country?
no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is going to the people of Venezuela and people from outside of Venezuela that used to be in Venezuela. And it goes also to the United States of America in the form of reimbursement for the damages caused us by that country. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. Do you have one? Yes, please. You were so nice before. I'm going to give you the final question. Go ahead.
you, Mr.
Unless it's a bad question, in which case I'll go one word. It's about who?
It's about Putin, if you want.
About Putin. Well, it's
Okay.
always nice
You had
to
a
talk
phone-
about Putin.
You had a phone call with him on Monday. Did he talk at all about Maduro? Did y'all talk about this?
No, we didn't.
And
We
then-
never spoke about Maduro.
Are you mad at him right now? I mean, there's this
I'm not
intelligence.
thrilled with Putin. I'm not thrilled with Putin. He's killing too many people.
It was that
I
intelligence.
thought that would be so. I settled 8 1/4 war. You know what the 1/4 was? Thailand and Cambodia. I did it again. They broke out, and I did it in about 5 hours, and I settled it. I'm giving myself 1/4, so I'm up to now 8 1/4. In other words, I settled the war, but then they broke out. They had a pretty bad breakout over the last 4 days. I got them to go back to peace. So I only give 1/4. I thought the easiest one would be, one of the easier ones would be Russia, Ukraine. It's not. And they both have done some pretty bad things. And look, that's Biden's war. That's not my war. But I want to stop the lives. Did you see where last month, 30,000, it was 27,000 the month before. 30,000, mostly soldiers, were killed this last month. 30,000. I want to stop that. You know, I got NATO to pay 5% instead of the 2% that they weren't paying. They weren't paying 2, now they pay 5. And we send them a lot of munitions, we send them a lot of things, missiles and various other things, a lot. And they pay. The United States is not losing money. We're probably making money on that. It's the last thing I care about. I just want to stop all those people. We're losing 25, 30,000 human beings that come from 2 places that are very far away. But if I can stop, because it's something I've been pretty good at doing, deals, I guess. It's all a deal. Life is a big deal. But If I can stop that war and stop 30,000 young people, in addition to the fact that people are being killed in Kiev, people are being killed in other cities throughout, a much smaller number, but they're being killed, viciously killed. So I'm not happy about it. I thought that would be something that would get solved. We have Mr. Witkoff here. I think that we're making progress, but that's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, Putin says it, everybody says it. If I were president, that would have never happened. But I inherited that war. That was Joe Biden, Zelensky, and Putin. I came into the situation, and it's a mess. And I will say this, I watched an operation last night that was so precise, that was so brilliant. I mean, it was incredible. If we had our people, like this general and our people involved, that war would not have gone on very long, that I can tell you. That war, to use an old term, that war has become a bloodbath. And we want it to get stopped. Thank you very much.
And I'm Gio Benitez in New York. You've been watching an ABC News special report. President Trump addressing the nation after announcing the U.S. has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife after a large-scale strike. President Trump saying, quote, "We are going to run the country after that strike," and quote, "Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil." President Trump saying that the U.S. is, quote, "not afraid of boots on the ground." Let's go ahead and bring in ABC's Alex Perche. The president said so much, Alex, because when we're looking at this, we're also seeing that the president said that we, as in the United States, are going to run the country until a judicious transition takes place. He says that we can't take a chance on someone else taking over without Venezuela's interests in mind. That was a very surprising note there from the president.
You're absolutely right, Gio. That was a remarkable development in this, what's been a remarkable day as we're learning more about this operation, which has led to the capture and later trial of Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia. But the president saying that we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. Gio, the other part of this is that we heard the president talk about investment from U.S. oil companies into Venezuela during this transition. He didn't give specifics as to how that would play out, but mentioned that millions, if not billions of dollars were going to be flowing into Venezuela to really kind of build the infrastructure and ramp up oil production there. That is something that Maduro had really kind of criticized President Trump of as he was escalating and certainly putting additional pressure on Maduro, saying that this was something about oil. The president now saying that the U.S. is going to oversee Venezuela until they can determine a safe, proper, and judicious transition. What that looks like, we don't yet know, but certainly it seems as though there's going to be a prolonged U.S. presence in Venezuela.
Alex, stand by. I want to bring in ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy right now, because Mick, you've had so much experience with the military, and we've learned that 150 aircraft were used in this operation from 20 different locations. The president said that this was an assault not seen since World War II. That was his quote, calling it an overwhelming American military power, a show of force there. What are your thoughts when you hear all of those details?
Well, it certainly was an overwhelming use of military force, as it should be. It's the best way to essentially secure the good of the force going in, essentially make sure that they have everything they need to protect the force. That is standard. There's a lot of aircraft used for mitigating air threats, and that was the biggest concern bringing this assault force with those helicopters. So I think that is what the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff was talking about specifically, and it was really needed, and it proved to be correct. They did take some casualties and did take some damage to a helicopter, but essentially the force came out intact with the objective met, which was capturing Nicolas Maduro.
What's also interesting is that the president said that they were essentially planning two different waves, and they called this the first wave. A second wave, he said, was probably not going to be needed here. When you hear this, obviously they were capturing the President Maduro, in that first wave, as he calls it. What do you think about this? Do you think that more could be coming?
Well, he might have been talking specifically, Gio, about this operation. So generally speaking, there's a main effort. In this case, it was Delta Force that went in there to do the assault and capture Maduro. If anything were to go wrong that required more forces, then there would be what's called a QRF, a quick reaction force, that's going to be stationed outside of the direct area of operations, but they can respond and essentially help out if there is, an overwhelming force that is met. That wasn't the case here, so it wasn't used. That may be what he's talking about specific to this operation. If he's talking about a follow-on operation, that's likely talking about whether the new government is going to be friendly to the United States, or the United States is going to continue its direct military action to try to influence, if not bring down the regime.
ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy. Mick, thank you so much. Let's go ahead and bring in Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas now. And Pierre, one of the things, the big questions here has been about notifying members of Congress in advance of the strike. And the president flat out said, no, we didn't.
That's what he said, and the reason he gave is that this was the military acting to support the arrest of Maduro and his wife, who had been indicted. That is the cover that they're using. That's the language they're using for how this operation of this scale could be conducted without notifying Congress. The president made a huge point of the fact that he felt that Congress would leak, but the broader implications now are coming to full frame. You heard the president say, we are going to run the country, and it will be there as long as that they need it to be. He also made the point of the fact that a second wave was prepared if it had been necessary. He left over the option that could be pursued if necessary. So there are a lot of broader questions about the national security and diplomatic moves going forward here. But again, the key, and you saw in that photograph of Maduro in U.S. custody, there was a DEA personnel with him. Law enforcement was there on the ground, allegedly with the military, to help bring Maduro to justice. They were there to arrest him, if you will. But this was an enormous military operation involving multiple layers of the military, also the intelligence community and U.S. law enforcement that we saw play out overnight.
All right, Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas, thank you so much. Aaron Katersky, our chief investigative correspondent, has been following this. You've been looking at all of these charges because they were unsealed earlier today. These are charges that go back to 2020, but now we also have a superseding indictment.
We do, and it charges not only Maduro, but also his wife and son, Gio, with sitting atop a narco-terrorism conspiracy that federal prosecutors here in New York allege put tons of cocaine onto American streets while enriching and corrupting Maduro and his close allies, and at least two of them are charged. And federal prosecutors accuse them of working with some of the most dangerous and violent drug traffickers, including members of the Sinaloa cartel, once run by Joaquin Guzman, known as El Chapo, and the FARC rebels who operated in Colombia, producing a lot of this cocaine. But Gio, ostensibly this was an operation to extract someone like Maduro, who's indicted on all of these charges. But as you heard from President Trump in his remarks a short while ago, it seems he had greater ambitions than just making sure Maduro faced these charges in a New York City courtroom.
And we heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio there at the press conference talk about the fact that it wasn't just the Trump administration, but the Biden administration also had Maduro on a wanted list.
Well, he had been facing these charges since 2020. They've been expanded now. The timeline has caught up to the present day, according to the superseding indictment. So he had been wanted in the United States at least since 2020. Secretary Rubio said it was under President Trump's direction where the U.S. military was finally able to go in and get him. And he said that should send a message to others who may be likewise positioned. The president, though, drew a line against Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who faced very similar drug trafficking charges with much of the same language. But he says the Biden administration gave him a raw deal, and that's why Trump decided to pardon Hernandez last November.
All right, Aaron Katersky, I know you're going to stay on top of your sources on this. Thank you so much. We do have the opportunity now to go to Anna Navarro, ABC's the co-host of ABC's The View right now. Anna, it is no secret you have been a longtime critic of the president. On this issue specifically, you have some different views, though.
Well, no, I criticize the way he did it. I criticize his method. I criticize the fact that for months now, he has been lying to the American people by saying this is about drugs, when in fact, today in that presser, he said it was about oil. But two things can be true at once. I criticize his method, but I am happy about the outcome. Nicolas Maduro is a thug and a dictator. He has inflicted incredible suffering on the Venezuelan people. He has expropriated U.S. property. He has held U.S. citizens hostages. He has made millions of Venezuelans, 8 million Venezuelans are exiled all over the world. Many, Gio, in our hometown of Miami, many here in Madrid, where I am today, who are celebrating in the streets because Maduro has left. Now, what Trump said in that presser has me incredibly concerned. He talked all about oil. He talked about running Venezuela. He talked about U.S. companies going in and putting in the structure and paying themselves back and selling oil. I don't think any Venezuelan wants to be held like a U.S. protectorate. I think what the Venezuelan people want is 25 years of suffering, oppression, and dictatorship is freedom, democracy, and justice.
And I saw video you posted there from the streets of Madrid. It looked like several folks there, many folks were out there celebrating what has happened. What do you think Venezuelans across this country, across the world, are feeling right now?
Relief. The same kind of relief that so many Cuban exiles felt when they learned that Fidel Castro had died. The same kind of relief that I hope to hear as a Nicaraguan American one day when they tell me Ortega is gone. I think Nicolas Maduro was the symbol of dictatorship. Remember, Gio, that this began over 25 years ago with Hugo Chavez. Nicolas Maduro is the heir to Hugo Chavez after he died and left, and he has fulfilled the same type of oppression. All
right, guys, I'm going to just stop it right here, man. Shout out to everybody in the building. Make sure if you have not, you double tap that screen. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, guys. So basically, this was a live to show that U.S. forces struck Venezuela last night. And they captured the president of Venezuela and his wife, who was previously indicted in the United States on drug trafficking charges. So they basically captured them and brought them back to America, guys, to face charges. The people of Venezuela aren't too happy about this, and they're basically demanding that Trump and his team show proof that the Venezuelan president is still alive, guys. Him and his wife. They want proof of life. So that was pretty much all today's live was about. It was, when they drop more updates, I'll keep y'all updated. Shout out to my moderators. Shout out to my subscribers, the old ones as well as the new ones. Shout out to all of my members. Most definitely appreciate y'all. And once again, shout out to the mods. This most definitely wouldn't run as smooth as it does if it wasn't for y'all. So I appreciate each and every one of y'all. Until I see y'all again, Sidewalk Gang, checking out. Y'all make sure y'all take care of yourselves. I'm gone, y'all. I'm tired. Thank you for the gift. I'll see y'all on the next one.